A number of Buffalo Bills are back in town as the team begins phase one of their offseason workout plan. Sal Capaccio has more on this up at our website, WGR550.com. Stay tuned. Sal's going to join the show at 5, and it is also draft week. The 2025 draft set to begin Thursday at 8 p.m. in Green Bay. The Bills currently hold the 30th overall selection in round 1. The Eagles have signed center Cam Jurgens to a 4-year, $68 million extension. $39.4 million of that is guaranteed. And at $17 million a year, that makes Jurgens the second highest paid center, only behind Creed Humphrey of the Chiefs at $18 million. The Sabres put a bow on their season with exit press conferences over the weekend with head coach Lindy Ruff and general manager Kevin Adams. Paul Hamilton has more on that up at our website, WGR550.com. And do stay tuned. Paul will join the show at 6 p.m. Around the rest of the sports world, playoffs are underway, starting in the NHL. 4 games tonight, 2 game ones. At 7, Washington hosts Montreal. Then at 10, the Oilers are in LA versus the Kings. And 2 game twos. 7:30, Winnipeg looks to take a 2-0 series lead over the Blues. Then at 9:30, Colorado looks to do the same against the Stars. While in the NBA, have just 2 games tonight. 7:30 sees the Knicks hosting Detroit. New York took game 1. Then at 10, the Clippers look to take game 2, tie up the series when they take on the Nuggets in Denver. And then in baseball, some late afternoon action. Just after 6, the Yankees host Cleveland. At 7, the Mets have the Phillies in town. Then an hour after that, the Blue Jays are in Houston versus the Astros. It's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
All right, what's the report from outside?
I was outside for maybe 3 minutes. I counted 8 Q-tips. It's got to be one person that just throws their Q-tips out the window when they're done using them in their cars.
It's
one person?
More than one person using Q-tips and throwing them outside?
I don't think I use 8 Q-tips in a year.
I think I've never used 8 Q-tips.
and the Bulldog.
What the hell is going on out there? I don't think I want to work in a place where people roll their windows down after using Q-tips for Lord knows what and just throw them on the ground.
Well, you do.
What, is it the 70s?
Oh, that's not very nice.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Driving on the highway 65 miles an hour. I get a little left in my soda from the fast food drive. Out the window. That was the 70s. Who gives an F about anything?
Throw a burrito out the window.
Nothing matters. 2025, what are you doing?
On WGR
Throwing Q-tips out of your car.
Sports Radio 550.
One somewhat savvy, creative listener last week when Mike was explaining that situation in our parking lot with these weirdly discarded Q-tips concentrated in one area of the parking lot said to me on Twitter that he suspected, or I don't remember if it was a man or a woman, they suspected that I was pulling a prank on Mike to pay him back for the chair thing that happened while I was away. I don't have time to lay all this out. Well, I mean, I do. It's a 4-hour show, but I just don't want to. That's usually what it means. I don't have time just means I don't want to. Just kids, just cut through. Anyway, and no, I'm not, I don't have that kind of foresight. I'm not a prank guy. I'm not creative enough to come up with an elaborate scheme to try to trick my friend and longtime partner here on the radio about Q-tips being discarded in the parking lot. It's not something I've got up my sleeve here. Everyone should know that by now, especially, and not that he thought that was true. Anyway, he's out sick today, so you're stuck just with me, Zach Jones, hanging out. We will spend, of course, the requisite amount of time on the NFL draft today. It is draft week. I mean, you don't spend months on end speculating and wishing and hoping and analyzing and speaking to experts, from really the time the season ends until now, and not go hard in the 3 days leading up to round 1 on Thursday. So we'll do plenty of that today, of course, and all week long with, a slew of guests. Today, Eric Wood, none other than Eric Wood, our regular Monday 4 p.m. in-season guest, will join us for a look at the Bills' offseason to this point and take a look ahead to what he might anticipate on Thursday, and for that matter, the entire weekend. So excited to reconnect with Eric here at 4 o'clock. At 5, Sal Capaccio will join me. Sal has got a piece up at WGR550.com laying out what the Bills are up to as they begin a first round of off-season voluntary conditioning work. Some videos available of some players in and out. There's really no way for anyone to take attendance out there, so we don't know who is and who isn't there. So if you're wondering about James Cook, I got nothing for you. I'd be surprised if he were there, but you never know. I don't want to assume that he's not either, and I don't have a way to tell you. So anyway, we'll talk to Sal about that, and of course, the draft as well. And then at 6, we will close up where we are going to begin today on the Sabres with Paul Hamilton. He will join me. We had the timing of the exit interviews. We had some players on Friday, more on Saturday, and then we had to wait until Saturday afternoon when our show was not on the air for Kevin Adams and Lindy Ruff to speak, which they did at length. Both men sat for, close to an hour. It was reminiscent of what Kevin Adams did on trade deadline day when there were just a few, Paul Hamilton and a couple of Buffalo News reporters on hand, Mike Harrington, I think Lance Lasowski. Anyway, on trade deadline day, and Adams spoke for like 45 or 50 minutes that day. Anyway, they went long, lots to say, and we're squarely into, speculation about what the offseason is going to be. I guess we're still waiting on Kevin Adams to have meetings in Florida with the owner, Terry Pagula. But as of now, Adams told us it'll be 2 weeks this coming Thursday, I think, or Tuesday. I don't remember what day Adams was on with us in that final week of the season. It was last Tuesday, the Leaf game, when Kevin joined us. And he said, rather emphatically, Lindy Ruff would be back. I guess we'll see about Adams. There is some speculation in the air. Elliot Friedman pondering changes to the Sabres front office. He stopped short, though, of predicting that anything really substantive is going to happen to Adams. What I read from Friedman, I didn't listen to the podcast, but he gets to, could Adams have a change in title or something to that effect? I'm not sure about that. So I don't know. That stops well short of something, change could be in the offing here. We all, I think, agree that something should be done. Something being done is warranted, but it certainly doesn't feel like that's going to happen. I suppose, again, that could change depending on how Terry Pagula likes or dislikes the answers to the questions he may have for Adams whenever they do get together to discuss the way forward here. One thing stuck out to me from the weekend, and I'm not sure, but I think this was pretty early on in the meeting with the media, where Adams just kind of sort of volunteered that he still feels like they should be a playoff team. And I want to play the whole thing. I'm usually not the guy who gets really fired up about the stuff they say. That's more Mike's role in our relationship. I'm usually like, they don't really mean what they're saying anyway. They're just trying to get through the thing without ending up in a ditch, that kind of stuff. But there's one particular excerpt, I think especially the very beginning of it, kind of stood out to me and to me warranted some discussion. Here's a clip of Kevin Adams addressing the media from Saturday.
I believe we should be a playoff team right now, and we failed. So it's owning that, taking my responsibility for that, and then moving past that and saying, here's how, I see us improving and what we can do to fix it. As always, just being very honest in my conversations with Terry to say where I think that I've made mistakes and where I think that we can fix certain things, and that's what I'll do. But I do believe that we're closer than farther, but the words are the words. We have to win hockey games, and I understand that. I
like the end. The words are the words, and there's just no question that the words, if anything, I may be guilty. You can tell me if you think I'm overreacting. The very start of that, I believe we should be a playoff team, really bothered me. And maybe it's a sign of an unhealthy relationship that we're all in with this hockey team. Because, maybe that's just some of a throwaway. But I believe we should be in the playoffs. sounds to me very much like someone who does not have a grip on what transpired here, what this season was, what this season came down to, because should be in the playoffs sounds like something you would say about a team that was very close to making the playoffs and right on the cusp of making the playoffs and just missed because, I don't know, the refs allowed a Hudson Fasching goal to stand when he clearly kicked it in 2 years ago. Like they were a point out that year, should be in the playoffs. I know it's a one little call, and who knows if it would have determined a change in how things ended. But the Sabres finished 12 points out of the playoffs. For all the hot finish that they had, they did get very cold again at the end and then managed to get Lindy his 900th career win on the final game of the season against the mighty Philadelphia Flyers, one of two teams in the Eastern Conference to finish behind you in the standings. So this was not a close call. This was not a team that was right there all year. This was a team that was buried by Thanksgiving and never recovered. And I don't know, should be in the playoffs. Your special teams were abysmal. You scored 43 power play goals, gave up 57 while you were a man down. Congrats on the 10 shorthanded goals. That closes the gap, but you're a minus on special teams. Both units were in the bottom third of the league on the season. Penalty killing was a little better than power play, but holy cow. Goaltending regressed. The overall defensive play was terrible. Hey, congrats on the 5-on-5 scoring. I shouldn't be so cranky about that. That's a very good sign and can be a sign of a team that, should be getting better results than finishing 12 points out of the playoffs. But how does I believe we should be in the playoffs right now land on Sabres fans that watch this season go by? A 14th straight without being in the playoffs, actually. I didn't think it was possible for Kevin Adams to really say anything that would frustrate me to this level anymore, because mostly, like I already said, my standard disclaimer, I'm not usually the one who overreacts to this sort of stuff, but it wasn't close. You built a young, flawed team still. Yes, you did a couple good things, really. I don't think it's really debatable. Ryan McLeod was a good idea. That has worked. Jason Zucker worked. That was a good idea. Maybe both guys could have been a more help 2 seasons ago when they were coming off that 1-point miss and really needed to establish more of a defensive identity. But anyway, whatever. Good ads. But overall, this team was still too young, too inexperienced, too prone to mental lapses when pressure was on and games were tight and the standings were still relevant. You built a flawed team again and want to sit there on the locker room clean out and tell me I believe we should have been a playoff team? I mean, are you looking for some kind of special credit for something that you didn't do? Because I'm very confused. Like, either you're delusional, and I would not want to accuse Kevin Adams of genuinely being delusional about their results and the team he has built, or he's just saying something to try to get through the news conference. But we're closer than we are farther. You're 12 points away. And I don't know if this is another version of whatever he was trying to get across to me and Mike a couple of weeks ago about the 13-game losing streak and how, their expected goals in half of those games was good enough. And what? You dropped 13 in a row. Nothing, not a single call-up, nothing happened during that time. And I'm going to listen to you months later tell me you believe that you should have been a playoff team. It sounds to me like you think a lot more of what you've built here than the results tell you. The results tell you everything. There is no should have been. There is no I believe. There are the standings, and there are the underlying numbers that often result in you being where you are in the standings, and the Sabres were bad at enough stuff, or flat out terrible at enough stuff, that they finished 12 points out of the playoffs. I'm just having a very tough time today with really all weekend. I heard about that on Saturday evening, and I just thought, what are we doing here? I really believe we should have been a playoff team. Like, there just was nothing. Like, what went wrong exactly? That derailed you. I can't. I don't have it. I don't have an answer. I don't expect you to either. But if you want to kick this around, 803-0550, it really annoyed me hearing that from him, because I don't. It just sounds like the kind of thing I could see Terry Pagula sort of nodding at and going, yeah, well, I do like, because, out here, there are times, I'll say it comes out in natural conversation, talking about them. I like a lot of the pieces. They've got some good players here, but there just is not enough. The number one line that they finished the year with is maybe a prime example of this to me, because Kulich centering their number one line, Zach Benson on the left wing and Tage Thompson on the right wing. They got good results with that line. Thompson came back alive as a top scoring player in the league. Like, he looks like a stud again. And that combination toward the tail end of the season had at least something to do with that. But here we are now, like, hearing the GM say, I believe we should be a playoff team. We should be in the playoffs right now. And we're closer than we are farther. Well, what was your best line? That was, right, Benson, Kulich, and Thompson. We're talking about a 20-year-old winger and a 21-year-old centerman with now grizzled veteran Tage Thompson. Is that going to be my plan going into next year? I mean, Josh Norris is somewhere in this mix, presuming he's not, absolutely made of glass and will actually be able to play some games for this team, in addition to the 3 that he played after coming here at trade deadline time, inheriting an injury. It's a great story. I don't know what to expect there, but maybe he takes the place of Kulich, and then you're maybe okay with everything. And maybe you can put Zucker up there with Thompson and Norris, and there's your veteran, because those guys are going to play all the top lines for the other teams, and I'm just really worried already. It's months away, and I'm worried about them rolling that out there to play 20 to 22 minutes a night and having to deal with the bumps and bruises and the learning curve for the young guys again. As that is, I think, almost definitively, in my opinion, the thing that has continued to trip them up. It's either young guys who don't know how to do it, or like midterm veterans like Thompson and Tuck. These guys aren't at the end of their careers, more like, say, Zucker is closer to the end of his career. They're like in the middle of their primes. They're not new. They're not young. They're pretty experienced. But do they know how to buckle down a game and play the way you need to play to win hockey games when there is pressure to perform and the standings still matter and you're in a playoff spot and all of it? I've just seen no sign whatsoever from this team that they can do it. I almost entirely, and I'm not positive that I'm right about this, because I don't know what various teams that the Sabres beat in this hot stretch near the end of the season, what level of A game I was getting from those teams in those games. Maybe I got their absolute level best because they were playing for seeding, but it's very possible it was, it's Tuesday night and we're in Buffalo. I don't know, let's just get through this. We're in the playoffs either way, seedings, whatever. I just think good stretches where you play responsible hockey, you play, to quote our buddy Paul Hamilton, the way Lindy Ruff wants them to play, against teams down the stretch. I just think I never want to buy it. And this isn't there can't be carryover, like momentum from one offseason, through the offseason to the next season. I mean, of course there isn't that, but did they prove anything to anyone? Did they prove anything to themselves? I hope not, because they had no pressure on them to perform, and, good for them, they did. But when it doesn't count, really, when you're just playing out the string, I think that's a very different mental headspace than we really need this game. And, it's starting to go the wrong way. And that, all that sort of stuff. So, look, I'm sure, we can all find, I watched them all, we can all find pockets of those games that we really liked, where they looked really good. Paul will cite this example in Washington where the Sabres were, just filling the net, but it got tight, right, back to 6-5, and the building's roaring, and Ovechkin has scored, and oh my gosh, and, a few months earlier the Sabres would have unraveled, and they didn't. Okay, sure, that happened, but it's just not. It's not the same as doing it in December to me. So I was pretty annoyed about, I believe we should be in the playoffs right now. If I've got any company, more than happy to welcome you into the program. 803-0550 is the phone number if you want to get in on that. The playoffs, yes, kids, that's right. The playoffs did start this weekend. I watched a little of most every game. I'm sorry, I did not make it to 10:30 last night for Vegas and Minnesota, or 10, whatever it was. That Leaf game got sideways. They pretty much dominated Ottawa, and check please, I'm out. But dabbled the others Saturday. Winnipeg was tested. That was tight. They were behind in the third period. They didn't score the winner until inside 2 minutes to go in the third period, and then added on an empty netter. So that was tense. The other game on Saturday got really sideways by the end, but that Dallas and Colorado game was really tight. And if you see 5-1 and just think Colorado outclassed them, I would pump the brakes on that. The goalie for Colorado, Mackenzie Blackwood, not like really a household name, but it's his crease to run with for Colorado, I thought played great, especially early in that game. And Dallas is down some guys, but that game was 3-1 for most of the third period, and then an empty netter, and then the dreaded, I think there was the dreaded goal after the empty netter. Like, put the goalie back in, score again. I hate that goal. It's the worst goal you can ever give up, and that happened, I think, to Dallas. Anyway, that was that. Carolina outclassed New Jersey, which was entirely predictable. I don't think there's a first-round series you should be more confident in than Carolina and Jersey. I just don't think Jersey, with Jack Hughes, I'd say maybe they have a puncher's chance there, but without him, I think they're going to get run over, and they definitely did last night. Mentioned Leafs and Ottawa that got a little nasty at times, but Toronto was clearly the better team, and Vegas did beat Minnesota last night. We've got a couple of game ones tonight and a couple of game twos. So the NHL has chosen to, space out the starts of all these series. We still don't have Tampa and Florida on the board until tomorrow. They play game one of their first-round series tomorrow, but Winnipeg and St. Louis will play some game two action tonight. Dallas and Colorado, the same. And then we've got Montreal getting going with Washington. I think that's the first game of the night. To go along with Edmonton and L.A. meeting for a fourth straight season. L.A. has home ice there. Edmonton has beaten them the 3 previous years. So we'll see about how that all goes. But the Sabres, I believe we should be in the playoffs. Kevin Adams on Saturday. I'm talking about that to start. We'll shift as we go, of course. NFL Draft Talk at 4 with Eric Wood and Sal Capaccio at 5. Paul Hamilton and the back end of the show at 6. Lots of time for you. You want to get in. And as I said, we'll segue into the draft at any point here. So if you got thoughts on that, you're just waiting for that, consider the door opened on that subject as well. But anything from the weekend of the NHL, and especially the Sabres hierarchy, having this news conference where Adam said he believes they should be a playoff team. 803-0550 is the number. Mike is out today along with Zach Jones. I'm the Bulldog, and you are listening to WGR.
couple days is more of our players starting with looking in the mirror first. If we all do that across the organization with, okay, what can I do better? How can I be the best version of myself in my job as role as general manager? That starts to build a culture of accountability. That's, to me, what really accountability is. It's knowing that I'm doing everything, reflecting and being self-aware with what starts with me first. And I think then that has a way of starting to work its way through the rooms.
Kevin Adams from Saturday, the finale of locker room clean out, a couple of days worth of players talking and culminating with Kevin Adams and Lindy Ruff meeting with the media in the 4 o'clock hour on Saturday afternoon. It was a lengthy time there. Like, there's Adams on accountability, and sure, you can, like, in a vacuum, that okay, yes, that's right. I think I agree with that. I would like each player to look within themselves and make sure that they're doing everything they can do. How? I don't want to make the mistake of assuming what any player feels about Kevin Adams as their boss. There's probably there's probably opinions kind of all over the grid on that. But when he's making that point to a player, he's making that point to Rasmus Dahlin or Tage Thompson or Ryan McLeod or Jacob Bryson, all right, anywhere on the depth chart about accountability. Do you not struggle? If you're the person you're the player in this scenario, and your boss, sure, he's your boss. You come in the room with some amount of respect for the job. All right, this guy's in charge. He's the GM. Okay, I got to listen with an open mind. What he has to say. He starts talking about accountability. As the GM of a hockey team that has not been to the playoffs in 14 years, the last 5 of which he has presided over as the general manager, with no prior experience on his resume whatsoever to speak of, as far as that spot in a hockey organization. He's been around hockey a long, long time, of course. How does the accountability speech from that guy go down? And again, maybe I'm guilty of just, digging too far into the words. But, they're not playing games anymore because despite the wishful thinking, they're not in the playoffs. So all we've got left is the words. And so, yeah, I can get pretty wound up. Kevin Adams has presided over like a third of the non-playoff seasons in this hockey team's history at this point. A third of the drought, I should say, is what it is. It's not the non-playoff years. 5 years on the job, and he's talking about accountability. How about some accountability from above? That's the thing. Like, I'd be fine. Yes, I'm a player on the team. I could have been better on the penalty kill. I could have buried that one chance. I should have worked harder on my back check. Sure, look in the mirror. Be honest. But you're getting a speech about accountability from an NHL executive who has presided over the tail end here, and I don't know where the end is in sight, but has presided over 5 straight playoff years, non-playoff years, extending this drought to 14 years. It's kind of, not even kind of, it flat out is mind-boggling that there's not more conversation about his job security. You know why there isn't? Because nobody has the heart to even talk about it because we don't think it's going to happen. Of course, now last year at this time, I did not think Don Granato was going to be replaced, and ultimately he was. So, I don't know, maybe the fire burns hot in Pagulaville when Adams goes down to Florida to meet with him or wherever and whenever they're going to meet, and maybe something does happen, but it does not feel at all like an organization that's handling their front office as though they have not been in the playoffs for 14 years or for 5 years under this general manager's watch. So you can be as well-intentioned and correct about talking about accountability to the players that you're meeting with, but it only gets me so far because, like, theoretically, I agree you should be talking about accountability, but the source who's talking about the accountability organizationally, I think is really lacking credibility on the subject, because he's being kept on despite flailing futilely to put together a team that can make the playoffs, and despite his belief that they should be in the playoffs right now. Should is really the problematic word there. Should, like they were denied, some injustice happened to them or something. No! You built a flawed team again. And looks, from all appearances, as though you're going to just continue on in the job. And I don't know how accountability gets mentioned and players don't walk out of that room just going, okay, sounds great. I just can't really get there with it. It's hard to hear, honestly. Nate is first up this segment. Hi, Nate. Thank you for calling. You're on the air here on WGR.
Hey, how's it going, Bulldog?
Good, man.
I echo the kind of similar sentiment to you, and I share in your frustrations. I've been playing hockey now for 25 years, and I listen to that presser and then accumulate that with the games going on, and I just could not feel like this organization is so far removed from the rest of how the NHL operates. I mean, Adam's talking about accountability in itself is like, I feel like you're talking to a bunch of high schoolers playing for a JV squad. Like, it's the NHL. Like, if a guy doesn't know, like, I got to show up and do my job, like, why are they even on your roster if you're talking about culture? I mean, they're trying to celebrate little tiny things when, like, other teams that actually have serious, competent people behind, the operations, like Boston, Rangers, they missed the playoffs 1 year and they're making changes. And us, we're sitting here like, oh, well, if we just, string together a couple more games, we might, be a bubble team again, this weekend. And even so, watching these the games going on this weekend, I don't see one team, not even like Jersey, who got smoked by Carolina. Like, I feel like we would just get steamrolled over by Jersey. There's no reason to even feel remotely optimistic about it. And it just starts at the top. I don't know how Pagula can sit there and, like, even feel like he belongs in the room with all these other owners and managers and stuff when he goes to the meetings for the league. It's just so frustrating. I mean, even though when he said, like, he's trying to celebrate, at one point he's talking about Samuelson finding his game, I was like, I don't know what games I was watching, but I guess I must have been watching a different team, because he just still seemed like a liability, afraid to touch a feather out there. I'm just speechless, basically, at where to go. I don't see how they can bring him back. Again, like you, I think they're going to, and I think maybe the only reason would be is that there's no one else that wants the job that's going to sacrifice hockey career. I mean,
yeah, I know.
I mean, I've got nothing on them.
Yeah.
It's just that I went from partial season ticket holders down to then, barely mini packs, and now it's like, well, if I got nothing else going on, I guess I'll go to the game if I can find something quick off, secondary marker or something like that. I got nowhere to go with them, and they're going nowhere in a hurry. That's all I got to say.
All right, Nate. Thank you. Appreciate the call very much. Yeah, I wonder. I wonder Terry Pagula in all of this. I find it. Look, I don't know the man personally. We've met, we've shaken hands. I've talked to him off the air a couple times, but it's not. I don't know the guy, so I don't know. Right, and I also need to be said, I don't know a whole bunch of billionaires. So for me to even guess at what makes what might make someone like him tick, it would be ridiculous. I have no idea. But one little part that I wonder if he just doesn't know what else to do. If I fire Kevin Adams, where do I go? right? Like who do I go? I mean, I know they've done this. He managed to hire Tim Murray, but he had Pat LaFontaine helping him do that. He managed to hire Jason Botterill and Dan Bilesma. No, hang on, I got that wrong. Bilesma went out the door with Murray. But he did get around to Bilesma with Murray's help, and then Botterill, like he's brought in assistant GMs to take over the team, and then dipped into the realm of local amateur hockey to get his hands on Kevin Adams, someone he was familiar with from being around the building and being involved with the Junior Sabres organization, like Adams was prior to ascending to the level of GM. I just wonder if he just doesn't know who to call. I know that sounds ridiculous. The league can help and all that, but I don't know. To just keep going just seems really hard for me to get behind. And boy, talking about accountability from an organization that is as stagnant as they are is just really tough. Mike is next up. Hi, Mike. Thanks for calling. You're on the air here on WGR.
Hey, Bulldog. Just following up, you look at Terry Pegula. He comes in with the Bills. He keeps Doug Whaley. He hires Rex Ryan. He pulls a rabbit out of his hat to get McDermott, who then is actively involved in Bean, and everything's gone well. Conversely, with the Sabres, he comes in, hockey heaven, the whole thing, multiple Stanley Cups. He keeps Regier, he keeps Ruff. He does everything you could possibly do wrong over the last 14 years. And, Kevin Adams has no business being a GM in this league. I mean, for God's sakes, he was running the Harbor Center 5 years ago, helping out with the Junior Sabres. I mean, it's the ineptitude of Terry Pegula that gets me. And, Kevin Adams made a statement of, no palm trees and taxes is why it's so hard to get people to come here. Absolutely wrong. There's no palm trees or taxes, and the tax situation isn't a problem with the Bills. It's the most inept professional sports team in the world. And it sounds like, oh, my God, that's overstating the case. No, it's not. It's 14 years in a row in a league that 50% of the league makes the playoffs. And, he just doesn't get it. He had one opportunity when he hired Pat LaFontaine to be basically the director of hockey, and LaFontaine hires Tim Murray to be a GM, but more of a glorified scout, because LaFontaine was basically in charge of hockey. And those two get into an argument. LaFontaine leaves, and Terry Pegula's ego is so large that he refuses to realize that he needs somebody to make decisions for him or give him advice as to hockey decisions. Right now, he's got a CEO who's the same, who's sharing duty with the Bills. He had his wife, God rest her soul. I mean, I know she's not dead, but I mean, she's had major problems. Who was the president of the Buffalo Sabres? I mean, how does that happen? You've been on Eichel for years because you don't like him. I mean, I love Jack Eichel. But I look at Jack Eichel, I look at Ryan O'Reilly, I look at Reinhart. They couldn't wait to get out of here because every year it's December 1st. They've played a month and a half of hockey, and they realize the next 5 months are worthless. I have nothing to play for except for my own stats. Why am I going to dive in front of shots? We've got no chance to make the playoffs. And then for Kevin Adams to come out and say we should be a playoff team, who cares? Everybody should be a playoff team once in 14 years. We want a contender. And Terry Pegula has no clue how to build a contender.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the call. That's really stark too when you get to all these years. And we're just trying to build up to the point where they can do what Montreal just did, which is squeeze in at the wire. I mean, good. Full credit for doing it. But holy cow. There is a long way from where Montreal is even. It's a long way from you to Montreal, 12 points as it turns out this year. A long way from you to there. There's, I think, even farther from where Montreal is right now to Tampa, Florida, Colorado, Dallas, teams, Vegas, teams that can really win the Stanley Cup this year. I know it's hockey, anything can happen. But, like, the process of becoming a contender, you got to crawl just to get to the wild card and then grow from there. And I can't even get to the wild card. So that, just the way Mike phrased that, trying to get to the playoffs is it's like a third of the story. The other 2/3 is becoming a Stanley Cup contender. And I don't even know. I feel like I need to live in a different galaxy to expect that anytime soon. It just does not seem realistic at all, sitting here right now. 14 straight. I believe we should be in the playoffs. 803-0550 is the number. Eric Wood coming your way at 4. We will segue into the Bills in the offseason and the draft, which is only 3 days away now. So Eric at 4, Sal Capaccio at 5, Paul Hamilton at 6. In between your calls. So you got anything on this subject? And even next segment, we'll take more here at 803-0550. Mike is out today along with Zach Jones on the Bulldog, and this is WGR. through the first hour of a Monday here, taking some calls on the Sabres end-of-season news conferences. 803-0550 is the number. Gabe is first up this segment. Hi, Gabe. Thanks for calling. You're on WGR. Hello, Gabe.
Were you looking for Dave?
Yep. Okay, sure. That'll work. Dave, sorry about the confusion.
Yeah, no problem. My thoughts are just, I know when Pagula got the Sabres, originally he was saying he's not a football guy, had no interest in that. But once he got into the NFL and realizes how easy it is to just print money in the NFL, I wonder if the Sabres have kind of fallen a little to the wayside where, it's a little bit more difficult on the business end to make that money. Because we all know the NFL they just print money.
Well, it definitely is more challenging. There's no question about that. I mean, the NFL teams do, they do all right. Yeah, they print money is what they do, and hockey is way more challenging. I'm sure no one has an appetite to ponder what sort of losses in the tens of millions, season over season, we're talking about here during this playoff drought, but in particular, the last 5 years, really Adams' tenure, with where season tickets are now, what the game-to-game attendance is like. I mean, it's just a very tough scene, and there's no way that it's financially viable in and of itself, right? I just owners of NHL teams in particular lose money. Most don't know that means he doesn't try, doesn't care, doesn't want to be, presiding over a successful sports team. I mean, if you had a choice. But it's possible the losing has just worn him down to the point where it's just kind of, I don't know, it is an afterthought. I don't know. That's a tough way to think about it for me. So it just makes too many assumptions about what makes the world go round for him. And so I don't know. But it is, obviously stark and very on the surface, very different situation success-wise, football to hockey. Obviously not even close. Thank you for the calls. Appreciate it very much. We'll hit a timeout here, come back and have our regular in-season Monday guest at 4 o'clock. That means Eric Wood, who's been with Mike and myself for many years in that slot during the season. We'll have our first off-season visit with Eric coming up right after this. Mike is out today along with Zach Jones. I am the Bulldog, and you're listening to WGR.
Caller
Workout plan got underway today with a number of Bills back in town. Sal Capaccio has more up at our website, WGR550.com. And do stay tuned. Sal's going to join the show in just about an hour at 5. And the team, they also made official today the signing of cornerback Trey White to a 1-year deal. Some other deals being handed out today. The Eagles signing center Cam Jurgens, 4-year, $68 million extension. $39.4 million of that is guaranteed. And now at $17 million a year, this makes Jurgens the second highest paid center, only behind Creed Humphreys of the Chiefs at $18 million. The Sabres did put a bow on their season with the exit press conferences from head coach Lindy Ruff and general manager Kevin Adams over the weekend. For more on that, Paul Hamilton has a piece up at our website, WGR550.com. We'll also hear from Paul today when he joins the show at 6. And the playoffs got underway last week into the weekend, and tonight we do have more games. Starting the NHL for tonight, 2 game 1s at 7. Washington hosts Montreal, then at 10, the Oilers in LA versus the Kings, and 2 game 2s. 7:30, Winnipeg looks to take a 2-0 series lead over the Blues. And then at 9:30, Colorado looks to do the same against the Stars. Note for Colorado, though, they could potentially have some help. Gabriel Landeskog has been activated from IR and is eligible to play. And then in the NBA, just 2 games tonight. 7:30 sees the Knicks hosting Detroit. New York did take game 1. Then at 10, the Clippers look to take game 2 and tie up the series when they go up against the Nuggets in Denver. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
I don't love junior mints. I just don't hate them. I don't understand why they are treated like second-class candy.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Oh,
there's a
you don't
fantasy
understand why a
team
candy that is basically toothpaste wrapped up in stale chocolate is treated like a second-class candy. All right, I get it. It's a good, valid question.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Is there a time to change? You know, the 3 teams I've drafted this year, second-class candy is pretty good.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
I don't know how many years ago that was, but if you just substitute the 3 teams I've drafted this year for the 3 teams I drafted today, I think the whole thing still holds up pretty much. Mike is out sick today, so yeah, I'm taking shots. I'm the Bulldog along with Zach Jones. Happy to welcome our dude Eric Wood back in on the West Her hotline. I said as we went to break that we haven't visited with you since the season ended, and I'm not positive. Do you have a recollection? Were you on with us one time a couple months ago, or has it been since they got knocked out?
I can't remember exactly, but I would assume it was that final Monday
right
after that Chiefs loss.
Yeah, that's what I think too. How are you doing, man? It's nice to have you. Nice. You're so busy getting holes in ones and with your Centered on Buffalo podcast. I'm impressed that you made time for us.
Yeah, I always have time for you guys, and country clubs are generally closed on Monday, so don't play a whole lot of golf on Monday. So, yeah, I got a hole in one again on Friday. That was my second one in about the last 13 months, and we celebrated appropriately. But I still made it in for this today. Unfortunately, Mike couldn't be joining us.
I know, but that's how you know someone's really sick, is because he set this up, and I know he was looking forward to talking to you. And so with him not being here, I have no question about him playing hooky or anything. I think he'd be here if he could be here, so bummed out for him to miss it. So the latest here, I mean, just now, we knew this on the weekend, or ahead of the weekend here. In fact, I think it was Thursday night that the news about Tre'Davious White started being reported, but the Bills have announced it and made it official. And I guess 2 things I'd like from you. How nice, I'm assuming you feel it's like a really cool thing that they can bring Tre'Davious White back to the organization. So like that tugs at the heartstrings and feels good, I think, for a lot of the fans, and I'll bet a lot of the players too that are familiar with Trey White. And then what do you think it could mean to them on the field in 2025?
Yeah, very excited to see Trey back in that locker room, and he is an awesome dude. The guys will be really excited to have him back. He's on a 1-year deal, so they don't make a long-term commitment to him, but understand that, prior to the injuries, and really just prior to those injuries, he's playing at an all-pro level, and then, unfortunately, back-to-back years, he does an ACL and an Achilles, and then the Bills move on from him, and, he's had his ups and downs since he's left, but he's getting further and further removed from those injuries. Now he's not getting any younger in the process, and there's a lot of research out there about cornerbacks when they get around 30 years old and over, kind of coming down in production, but we'll see what Trey still has left in the tank. He's very smart, savvy player, and I would love to see him regain some of that form prior to those injuries, just because with the career trajectory he was on, who knows, how many Pro Bowls and what kind of run he would have had in Buffalo, and unfortunately they had to make business decisions and move on from him. But to have him back, it's good for the locker room. Young guys can learn from him, and at that cornerback 2 spot, I mean, he might be our guy right now, and I'm sure we'll get into the draft and whatnot, and there's still some available free agents out there at the quarterback position, and guys will teams will move on from players throughout the offseason as well. But where it stands right now, I think it's a really solid signing at this stage of the game.
If he ends up in a backup capacity, which I guess until we see him play, I guess I want to say that is still the scenario I'd be rooting for, that they find someone in the draft here to play opposite Benford and just sort of push everyone down the depth chart one rung with White, at the top of it behind whoever ends up starting. I wanted to ask you this about his voice in the room and him being the respected leader that he is. If he isn't the player that he's been and his playing time reflects that, how much can that mute a player in the leadership department? Because usually you got to be someone who's mattering to the outcomes on the field to an extent. At least I've heard that. I mean, how do you feel about that part of this?
No, and I see your point there. Now, Trey has done it on the field throughout his career, and he's played in this system before, so he understands the ins and outs of the system, which helps. And the fact that they can throw up some pretty serious highlight reels of this guy making plays in the league in this system helps him have a voice. Guys struggle to have a voice in the league when you haven't done it before. You know what I mean? You think about, in quarterback up in a backup role, those guys, while they might not be the loudest in the locker room, they're still going to have a really strong presence in a quarterback room, very similar to this. If the Bills end up drafting a guy early in the draft, he's going to be able to help that guy along, and that guy's going to understand and likely know who Tre'Davious White is.
Eric Wood, Bills radio color analyst and host of the Centered on Buffalo podcast, which you can find on all of your streaming services, here with us on the Wester Hotline on WGR. Well, before we get to the draft, and of course we will, you mentioned we'll get to it, how about the offseason to this point? I mean, one of the biggest things that stands out is that they signed 2 players who are going to miss 6 games, as we can talk a little bit about that, or a lot about that if you like, but on the whole, what do you think about what the Bills have done in this offseason so far in free agency?
Yeah, I think they did a nice job of combining like a Bosa signing that's got some high risk, high reward to it with some of his injuries, and you get him on a pretty team-friendly deal, and it's just great to see these Bills-friendly deals at this point, because people want to come in here, they want to play with Josh Allen, they want to go compete for Super Bowls, they want to be a part of this culture. So you bring in a Bosa who's got some serious upside. I really like the Ogunjobi and Hoyt signings. Now, it's unfortunate that those guys are going to miss the first 6 games of the season, and was really caught off guard that to see both those guys catch suspensions like that. I feel like we're seeing less and less in those nowadays, but it's unfortunate because you're almost going to have to build a roster coming out of training camp, especially in that defensive line room, where it's going to look a lot different come 6 weeks later, because those guys are going to be major contributors, and I'm excited about both those signings. But you're going to have some bodies, whether it's through the draft or some late signings, just to kind of get you to that 7th game. Now, you'd like to think that those guys come in fresh for that 7th game. They don't risk injury. Maybe that's a really welcomed kind of resurgence to the defensive line. But unfortunate it happened. But I'm still excited about both those signings. And those guys aren't on one-year deals, so it's not like you miss, 30% or more of, the one-year deal you got on those guys. You already had some kind of insurance in Dane Jackson, and I've liked a lot of the signings that the Bills made. Josh Palmer at receiver is a guy that had Brandon Bean on the podcast. Super excited. He's super excited about what he can kind of bring to this offense. And so I thought they did a good job But the biggest part of it was re-signing their own. And I know the James Cook thing still lingers out there, but, man, you find an offseason where you're able to give Josh Allen the deal that he wanted, one that he's excited about long-term, and then you get the other guys in Benford and Rousseau and
Bernard
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bernard. I mean, they did a heck of a job of locking up a lot of the homegrown talent as well.
Yeah, I'm very excited about Hoyt and was really bummed out to hear about that 6-game suspension. It was notable to me that Bean said they knew about that when they signed him, so that's how much they wanted this player, that they were willing to live with that, and then they got the kind of sideswiped by the Ogunjobi suspension. On Palmer, how do you feel about the offense overall here? Because Eric, I feel like last year, everybody eats was the mantra in the summer and into September. We got 6 weeks in. There were a couple of rocky games in the passing game, and a third-round pick goes out the door for Amari Cooper. So they felt the need to pivot to someone who was, more of a traditional number one receiver. And even though it didn't work out that he produced that way here, they felt the need to go get that player. I'm wondering what's different this offseason, because I don't feel like Palmer rises to that level. I feel like he's somewhere on the graph between Mac Hollins and Amari Cooper, and that's there's a wide swath there, but I think he's somewhere in between. Do you think they've done enough at receiver?
I do, but I don't think when you listen to what Brandon and Sean said at the end of the season, someone that can stretch the field horizontally and vertically, I don't know that we got that player yet. Now, we'll see what we get from Palmer, because Brandon Bean said it himself, there's a number of instances where he's open down the field. He just wasn't found on those routes with the Chargers. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But if they were to add someone with some serious speed, whether it's through the draft or this offseason, another point, that wouldn't surprise me, because that's the one kind of element of this offense that could really put other teams in a bind. I mean, this is the second highest scoring offense in the league. You have the MVP at quarterback, highest scoring offense in Bills history through 16 games, even without that 17th game, so no asterisk on that. And so there's not a whole lot that needs to be done with the offense to, quote-unquote, fix it. But when you talk about really putting defenses in a bind, if you could put someone out there that just has some serious wheels where, okay, now we have to worry about this guy taking the top off the defense, in addition to everything else that they bring to the table. Yeah, I think that would be the one thing that they would still be looking to add. That is exactly where I am, Eric. I mean, I think, them being as productive as they were on offense. They had a great year on offense. There's no denying it. Allen wins the MVP. I feel like that almost is... it sounds a little silly to refer to that as a double-edged sword. But on one hand, I think it could allow you to think, it'll be fine. He'll make it work, right? He's a wizard. Josh Allen will figure it out, whoever we put out there with him. But the other side of that to me is lean into it. Get me another guy. Get me that speed element. I feel like I've been begging for more speed, especially in that passing offense, since they lost that first AFC title game in the 2020 season. So I think one more guy there that brings that element is like the thing I'm still looking for. No, and I see your point completely there. And I'm with you. Yes, the Bills were incredible on offense last year. Teams are going to try and do all they can to adjust to what Joe Brady and this offense did. So trying to bring some type of different element, and that different element would be, just a burner out there on the field that, okay, so you're going to play man-to-man defense. Okay, now you're in a high-risk situation if you don't keep a safety over top of whoever this player is. Now, like I said, I'm not saying Curtis Samuel's that take the top off the defense guy, but when they brought him in last year, they assumed he was going to be their senior receiver, and he gets a turf toe injury in the preseason, which hampers him a lot. And this on the show during the season, like, turf toe injury, seems just so minor. But I've had it in the past and had to play with a metal plate in my shoe, and it's not very fun. But my game isn't predicated on speeding, be able to cut and make quick movements. It just needs a different
You
name
don't
so
say.
people understand the severity. so people understand the severity of how much that can hamper a guy like Curtis Samuel. And look, people will be blowing me up on Twitter. I'm not saying that Curtis Samuel is the end-all, be-all. He's the guy when they refer to someone that can stretch the field. I'm just saying, when they brought him in last year, I'm assuming that's what they were envisioning more, and not just him in that kind of gadget role that we saw him hampered by the injury.
Right. Eric Wood on the West Here Hotline with us here, Bills Radio color analyst on WGR. You mentioned James Cook in the course of one of the answers here, and I don't know, maybe just how do you think this year goes? Like, what do you think is the most likely outcome for him, considering that he is under contract and the Bills have there's no compulsion other than, harmony, which is not nothing. But they don't have to address it if they can't find some common ground. What's the most likely outcome, you think, with James Cook in 2025, Eric?
I think the most likely outcome is he comes back and has another good season, and he's trying to prove himself of getting that big-time contract, whether that's from the Bills or somebody else. When you're a second rounder on your rookie contract still, I mean, I guess you could, but you're not in a position to hold out and, cost yourself, through training camp, what is it, $20-something thousand a day, maybe more than that now. And so I don't know that you're in a position to do that, and it's not going to be a good look as you're trying to earn that second contract. And I just think that as much as they love and appreciate James Cook, I can't imagine that they can't have just adult conversations about, look, we're not at the same number right now. And, if you can get that from someone else eventually, maybe that works out. But the only way you get that is by having a season similar to what you had last year. We're going to help you do that. So I don't know. I think it'll play itself out to where James is back and he runs his tail off again. And that's how I would envision it happening, just because the way it sits right now, if the Bills really wanted to, they could franchise him the next 2 years where he still can't. I mean, the Bills just hold so much leverage over this situation.
Yeah.
It's different from some of the other situations we've seen from holdouts elsewhere.
It is uncommon. Like, the Bills have had a pretty smooth trip here through the McDermott Bean era. There was a Poyer year where he didn't come to some offseason stuff, but even that got settled. So this hasn't gotten bumpy yet, because we don't, there's nothing, he's not missing anything yet, although there's some voluntary stuff going on and we don't know if he's there or not. But it's been a pretty smooth ride. How much, if at all, could the Bills sort of, I don't know, using the leverage they've got, right? Using everything that's at their disposal, even if it gets to the franchise tag or whatever. But if they get this guy, that guy extended and spend money in free agency, but don't address James Cook, is there a problem in the room? Like, are players feeling badly for him, and does it manifest itself in some meaningful way, do you think?
I would say the way they took care of so many guys this offseason, it showed that they're willing to take care of their own. Now, if you're trying to get an unrealistic number, it showed that the Bills, maybe aren't going to get there. And that's just indications that I've caught through reading whatever on social media and online of, it just seems, and Brandon Beane said as much himself, that, there was just a separation of, where they found value there. So running backs are interesting, though. I mean, you saw Saquon Barkley lead the Eagles to a Super Bowl last year, and everybody else would say, yeah, maybe I'll pay a running back. And so I think the league's still kind of split on whether you give out that second contract to a big-time running back. Now, I will say this about James Cook. He didn't take a ton of hits in college. He wasn't used a ton at Georgia, so he doesn't come in with all those SEC hits that you see a lot of running backs that come out of Alabama and Georgia and whatnot. So he comes in a little bit cleaner than most, and while this year they really used him as a feature back, throughout his time with the Bills, he hasn't taken that kind of workload. And so I would say that he would appear to be a cleaner guy to be able to pay for that second contract. But we've just seen too many times throughout NFL history, you pay those running backs and they go downhill quickly. But in my opinion, he's a guy that I think you could give that second contract to and feel confident about it.
Yeah, to me, as long as it doesn't rise to the level of like the what he's talking about, right? Because part of that wear and tear point, Eric, is he's playing under 50% of the snaps as a pro in the NFL. Barkley's closer to 80% of the snaps. I mean, that's a big variance to me, and I don't want the Bills to use Cook more. Like, their mix in the backfield, like I'd sign up for another year of what they did, how they handled the snaps there last year. So I'm not itching to get Cook on the field more. I think that would lessen his effectiveness, but all the same, the fact that he isn't on the field more should limit how much I'm going to pay him year to year.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And to me, he brings tremendous value. And, I mean, the progression I've seen with him as a running back, that really they brought him in. They thought he was going to be more of a receiver, kind of a third down back, in the way that he runs with pace and vision, and he sets up blocks, and he can hit the home run. He can get the tough yards. They use him pretty much as a goal line back this year. They had so much confidence in him in those situations. He shows up in big games. He shows up in the playoffs. And so to me, really excited the way he's developed as a pro. And look, you could tell that McDermott and Bean heading into the offseason didn't maybe expect to have these conversations, because all they did in the postseason press conference was brag on him as a person, as a player, and which I'm sure his agents are using, just throwing that in the Bills through those negotiations.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we've only got a few minutes left here, and I don't want to treat like the Saturday part of the draft as a throwaway. Maybe we'll have a moment or two on the end of this, but what's your ideal Thursday, Friday this week for the Bills, with their pick at 30 in round 1 and then the 2 picks in round 2 on Friday at 56 and 62?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I'd love to see some help on the defense side of the football. Whether that's at corner, whether that's at defensive tackle or defensive end, that's not earth-shattering there. But we've talked about it many times on the show that I just truly feel like we need to take some swings to find a difference maker on the defensive line, in an impact guy. Can you get that at 30? I'm not sure, but take some swings. There's rumors of defensive tackles. The kid from Michigan, Grant, he's 6'4", 331. He's got some explosion as well. Can he be a guy that maybe frees up in Ed Oliver a little bit more? Or, on the edges, is there some guys that are free on the edge that we think can get to these quarterbacks in the playoffs? I think if you can shore up that defensive line, that's going to help out the entire defense, honestly. You get that defensive line right, then your secondary is always going to look better as well. But there's some interesting cornerback prospects as well. And if the Bills have a guy that they love at 30, or move around and grab one of those guys that can come in, be a day one starter. I mean, a lot of times in the draft, I'm not saying you always take best player available or go for the guys that are in positions that get paid the most money, but cornerbacks are starting to get paid a lot of money in this league. And if you think you got a guy that can come in, be a day one starter, and you get him for 4 years on that rookie deal, man, that looks pretty appealing as well. Yeah,
and a fifth-year option. I mean, that costs more too, but still, it's still a tool you've got that can help you keep the players' money down, at least for the first few years of that. All right. Well, what does the draft hold for you? Are you working anything? You got anything to promote here, or just the usual the podcast? And I mean, Derby time's around the corner here for you too, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Kentucky Derby's next week, so that'll be a lot of fun. And then, this week we'll have another episode of the Center on Buffalo podcast coming out. We'll have some more draft talk. Last week I had Chris Trapasso on, and he did an awesome job breaking down the draft, better than I ever could, with the amount of time that he spends on the draft. And so I'll be watching Thursday. Last year I stayed up and the Bills traded out, and I regretted missing out on so much sleep. But no, I always enjoy the draft. It's nostalgic. Going back to 2009 when the Bills drafted me in the first round, it was an absolute dream come true. And, watching these guys out there. Now my daughter gets into it. She likes, the outfits and the hoopla. Yeah. My son recognizes some of it and all that. So it's a fun deal. And I'll say this, and I feel like I put this on Twitter more than I probably should. At some point, Buffalo needs to host the NFL draft. It just needs to happen. They need to rotate the draft around to cities that aren't likely going to host Super Bowls based on their climate or size. And Roger Goodell's got to bring, I'm hoping it's, once this new stadium opens, give Buffalo the draft.
Yeah, I heard through the grapevine, I'm not sure if I assume it's out there publicly, but I know Pete Goelli has said they're sending a team to study, sort of look at what Green Bay's doing in preparation to make a proposal. I feel like, Eric, you get a new stadium like that, you're out of the running in the Super Bowl for the reasons you mentioned. I feel like the draft, if you're going to go to Green Bay, you're going to go to Cleveland, you're going to Detroit, recognize that Buffalo is smaller than those cities, but Green Bay, I'd be stunned if the Bills don't get a draft in like 28 or somewhere, at some point here early on in the new stadium's life.
I agree, and I think that Buffalo will show out as well or better than any other NFL draft host site, and it'll be a fun destination for people to come to if they haven't been. But the people in Western New York will support it so much. It'll be a ton of fun.
Thanks a lot for the time, Eric. Continued success with the podcast, and have a great time at the Derby and all that, and the golf game too. We'll look forward to connecting at some point in the summer.
Yep, sounds great. Always good catching up, Bulldog.
That is our dude, Eric Wood, on the West Her Hotline. You hear him in season in this spot, Mondays at 4 here on WGR. But during the off season, we like to check in and get a idea of what he's thinking about as the Bills progress through the off season. All right, we'll take a timeout here. Can reset the conversation from the first hour regarding the Sabres, and of course mix NFL draft conversation into this as well. Lines are available to you at 803-0550 if you've got a comment or a question on any of those subjects. We'd love to hear from you at some point here. Coming up, we've got Sal Capaccio on the Bills beginning their voluntary offseason workout rotation today. That's coming up at 5. Paul Hamilton will join me at 6 as we look at the NHL playoffs through the weekend and the Sabres news conferences on the weekend, wrapping up yet another non-playoff year. 803-0550 is the number. Mike Schopp is out today along with Zach Jones. I am the Bulldog, and you're listening to WGR.
Official this afternoon, cornerback Tre'Davious White back with the Bills. He signs a one-year deal. He's not the only Bill back in town, as a number of the players came back as today began phase one of their offseason workout plan. Sal Capaccio has more on this up at our website, WGR550.com. And do stay tuned as Sal will join the show in just about a half hour at 5. The Sabres put a bow on their season with an exit press conference from head coach Lindy Ruff and general manager Kevin Adams over the weekend. Paul Hamilton has more on that up at our website, WGR550.com. Paul's also going to join the show. His spot will be at 6, so do stay tuned for that. And playoffs got underway this weekend. 4 games tonight in the NHL, 2 games that are game ones. Washington hosts Montreal at 7, then at 10 the Oilers are in LA versus the Kings, and 2 game twos. 7:30 Winnipeg looks to take a 2-0 series lead over the Blues, then at 9:30 Colorado looks to do the same against the Stars. Colorado also, good news for them, they potentially get some help. Gabriel Landeskog has been activated from IR and is eligible to play. And then some coaching news as well in hockey. His former Sabres head coach Dan Bilesma has been fired from Seattle as their head coach after just 1 season at the helm. Then in the NBA, we have 2 playoff games. 7:30 sees the Knicks hosting Detroit. New York did take game 1. Then at 10, the Clippers look to take game 2 and tie up their series when they take on the Nuggets in Denver. That's Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
And I think is a really fascinating player is Emanwari. 6'3 and an eighth, 220. His athletic testing numbers at the combine were phenomenal, off the charts. He ran a 4.38. He vertical jumped almost 42 inches. The tape reflects that as well. To me, he's a complete safety prospect. Now, it depends on team and scheme how they want to deploy him. But I think just when you look at the tape combined with what he is as a physical athlete, to me, he's a fascinating safety prospect.
That is the great Greg Cosell speaking on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. And speaking of Ross Tucker, he will be a guest on this show tomorrow at 5 o'clock, preceded by Bill's corner, Christian Benford. We'll have Christian Benford on at 4:30. He's co-authored a children's book that is out. That is how we came to end up with Benford on our show. So we're looking forward to that tomorrow at 4:30, but Ross Tucker at 5. Cosell there talking about Nick Emanwari, my draft dreamboat. Oh, Nick Emanwari. Oh, I get lost just looking in his eyes. No, this has been my draft crush since before the combine. It's one of the first times I looked at the prospect rankings, not even reading a word that was written about anybody. I saw his measurable 6'3", 220. Oh my God, this guy's a safety. What a freak. And what I really like, and I've heard Cosell, he's a regular guest with Chris Brown and Steve Tasker on One Bills Live as well, and I often hear those segments on Fridays in season, and here in the draft season he's been doing that too on my way in here. And I know I've referenced this numerous times, him talking about Emanwari, and just like he's talking about him there. It's not one of these guys where you have, because the combine... And I think maybe some fans, and I would admit that I even can have a tendency to do this, when there's a guy that just explodes at the combine, right? It's the workout is incredible, but you're looking at a player, you're hearing about a player, thinking like, oh, this guy's so good. How come I've never even heard about him? Well, because he wasn't that good, really. He didn't play that well. The tape isn't that impressive. There's not a lot of highlights to show you. But what an athletic freak. Look, he jumped out of the gym, ran this great 40 time, 3-cone, all the stuff, right? And I would worry if you were hearing from a guy like Cosell there about, well, he's intriguing because of the athleticism and how he tested at the combine and the 40 time and the vertical and all the stuff, right? But I don't see it when I watch the games, right? I'm not sure where we're at here. Or he's not as versatile as you'd like. He's somewhat limited in the scope of what you're going to be able to expect from him, despite this great athleticism at the next level. What I hear Cosell saying there, first of all, I'll just admit, it does not sound like he's describing a player that's going to last until 30 in the draft. But it could. Safety is not usually a premium sought-after position, but there have been exceptions. Kyle Hamilton's a recent one with Baltimore, and that's one of the comps you get to right away when you think about this guy, Emin Worry, because as Greg Cosell's telling you there, he can do everything you need as far as being a safety goes. But then you've got this size and speed and athleticism combination that should, I think, lend itself to deployment in a lot of interesting and different ways, not just traditional too deep, hanging back there, or being a traditional box safety, whatever it is. I've heard Cosell elaborate more than even in that clip. Like, you want him to cover slot receivers? He can do that. You want him as big nickel? He can do that. You want him deep third? Fine. Deep, whatever you're looking to do. He has shown that he can handle it in college. And I just love the idea of getting a guy like that to utilize on my defense. Like a guy that could be a candidate for the best athlete on the field in any given week, any given NFL game. That is very intriguing to me. Now, that does not translate directly to, therefore I'm going to win X amount and finally get over the hump and beat the Chiefs in the playoffs and go to the Super Bowl and all the things we're striving, or that we assume the Bills are striving, that we want them to be striving for. Man, that athletic package. I like this guy so much. As hot and bothered as I can get about getting another receiver, it came up during my conversation with Eric Wood last segment again, that I still just feel like there's another piece that I'm looking for, and really the draft is the place you're turning your attention to now. I'm not that intrigued by anything that's left over in free agency at this point. Maybe the Bills will take some flyers on some long shot reclamation type projects like they did last year in the form of, most prominently, I guess, Chase Claypool, although Marquez Valdez-Scantling qualified as that to me too. He made the team and then it ended up going on his way. But I think the draft is where you're looking for that. I like Emin Worry so much that if it came to pick 30 and somehow Matthew Golden is still on the board and so is Nick Emin Worry, I would vote Emin Worry. Luther Burden is still on the board, I would vote Emin Worry. That is how much I'm intrigued by a player with that skill set. What are we kind of looking for? It's not to say that this doesn't have to line up with what the Bills are looking for. We know they want to fortify the defense. I think most fans are in lockstep agreement about that. Many are even talking, like Sal's talking about, using all three of the picks on day 1 and day 2 of the draft on defensive players. Okay, would they turn down an opportunity to get a playmaker on the defensive side of the ball like Emin Worry? It is not the neediest position that they have. Okay? Obviously, defensive tackle, they need a body that's going to be in the rotation and play. The same goes for corner. You might even say that's even elevated more because it's really not a rotational position normally. Teams and the Bills themselves have done a little of that at times, but mostly it's like, who are our guys? They're the starters. That's it at that position, whereas defensive tackle, defensive end is more of a rotational thing there. It's the exception on the defense. The corner is still a bigger need than even defensive tackle, defensive end, I think. But Emin Worry would just be that, for me, that would be too tempting to turn down if somehow he makes it that far, because they need to find an impact player on that defense. They've got some very nice players, even all pro level players in Milano earlier in his career. I like Bernard. I like to varying degrees differently. Rousseau's a nice player. Ed Oliver is about the same to me. They have not ascended to like, oh, what am I going to do? I got to deal with this guy level. And I feel like Emin Worry could be that for wherever he lands in the NFL. And the idea of having that kind of talent, that kind of player, that kind of athleticism on the field defensively is, I get lost thinking about all the different, just the different places they could use him. It's a reason I get excited about hearing about Michael Hoyt, that he's even covered players in the slot, and he's edge, he's tackle, he's stand-up, he's linebacker, he's all the different things. I feel like Emin Worry is a smaller version of that. He's not quite as big as Michael Hoyt, who's primarily a defensive lineman. But he does get utilized because of his athleticism in all these different ways. I feel like Emin Worry would be like that, but even more because of the position he plays and being able to move him around. That's my dude. That has been my biggest draft crush. It's unrealistic. I'm just a punter over here. I'm not going to land the dream boat, but whatever. It's still there. We won't know till Thursday. I'm eager to see where he ends up getting chosen. And in my heart of hearts, I hope the Bills have to make a choice on whether to pick him or not, so I can know at least whether this crush was, somewhat warranted or not, hoping that they would see what he could be for their defense. 803-0550 is the number. You want to comment on that or anything else pertaining to the NFL draft? Would love to have you spend a good hour at the beginning of the show on the Sabres and the comments from both Lindy Ruff, but more pointedly, GM Kevin Adams on Saturday, the culmination of locker cleanout for the Sabres following a 14 straight non-playoff year. Something Adams said in particular rankled me, and we spent a good part of the first hour of the show talking about that. Feel free to revisit that as well. Again, 803-0550 is the phone number. Mike is out today along with Zach Jones. I am the Bulldog, and you're listening to WGR.
It's just one of the
Doing all right on this Monday. Dingus Day, by the way. That's going well for you. It's been a little rainy on and off, but that usually doesn't deter anyone. I just hope you're getting through it. Hope you're not hampered by any kielbasa knee. That's what I call it. When I was a runner and I go to try to go run on the Monday after Easter, like I got kielbasa on the knee. It's just like I just not feel. It wasn't actually a knee injury, but it's just the weight of the metric tons of sausage you might eat if you are lucky enough. I'm going to say lucky enough to have that meal more than once. Yesterday was just a brunch, so that was it. There's some leftover. I wasn't hosting, but I got sent home with plenty of sausage. There's a meal in there, at least one. Still to come. So anyway, I hope everybody's enjoying Dingus Day. We had a wonderful Easter. My parents are 91 and 90, and seeing them at my sister's house yesterday was wonderful, and the meal was fantastic. Everybody chipped in and did their part, and we had a great time, and I hope everyone enjoyed the holiday, and if you're out there enjoying the revelry today as well, hope you're enjoying that too. I've never had the opportunity. Well, I shouldn't say never. This Dingus Day stuff has been going long and strong enough for 1 year when I was still working nights at WBEN. I went before my show and was part of a panel that judged Polish sausage. I was, and honored doesn't even begin to describe how proud I was of this, and my parents too. Anyway, but that was the only year. I went to the Adam Mishkevich Library for that, took part in that, and then had to hightail it out of there to get back to do my evening show. And all these years later, I've never gotten out of work and gone barreling down to the celebrations. I feel like entering at that point. People have been going probably pretty hard for a lot of the day. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like a comfortable point of entry. So it's never been my day, but here, man. All for it. Flying the red and having a good day. I hope everyone is being safe and careful and all of that. We will hit up a timeout. Keep going on the Bills here with the draft coming on Thursday. Sal Capaccio will join me as the Bills begin voluntary offseason workouts today. So we'll get into that with Sal and, of course, look ahead to Thursday and round one of the draft, if not Friday, with 2 picks in the second as well. When Sal joins the show right after this. Mike is out today along with Zach Jones. I'm the Bulldog, and you're listening to WGR.
Call
A number of Bills are back in town as today began phase one of the team's offseason workout plan. We'll get more on that as Sal Capaccio will join the show next. And the Bills also officially announced the signing of cornerback Tre'Davious White to a one-year deal. The Eagles have signed center Cam Jurgens to a 4-year, $68 million extension. $39.4 million of that is guaranteed, and at $17 million a year, this makes Jurgens the second highest paid center, only behind the Chiefs' Creed Humphreys at $18 million. The Sabres put a bow on their season with the exit press conferences from head coach Lindy Ruff and general manager Kevin Adams over the weekend. Paul Hamilton has more on that up at our website, WGR550.com. And for Paul's thoughts, do stay tuned as he'll be joining the show in just about an hour at 6. The playoffs did get underway last week, and they continue tonight. We'll start in the NHL. 4 games tonight, 2 game ones. At 7, Washington hosts Montreal. Then at 10, the Oilers are in LA versus the Kings. Then we have 2 game 2. 7:30, Winnipeg looks to take a 2-0 series lead over the Blues. And then at 9:30, Colorado looks to do the same against the Stars. And for Colorado, potentially some good news as Gabriel Landeskog has been activated from IR and is eligible to play. We also had some coaching news, though, in the NHL. The Kraken making some changes, and a number of familiar faces are involved. Head coach Dan Bylsma out after 1 year, and as Ron Francis appears to be moving to upper management, the organization is elevating former Sabres general manager Jason Botterill to serve in the same role. And then in the NBA, just 2 games tonight. 7:30 sees the Knicks hosting Detroit. New York took game 1. Then at 10, the Clippers will look to even the series in game 2 as they take on the Nuggets in Denver. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio, Sal Capaccio
on WGR.
All right, happy to have you along for the ride with us here on a Monday afternoon, as dreary and rainy as it is. Hey, at least the temperatures are moderate, right? We're nearing. There are tea times, multiple tea times happening. We're there. We made it. I know it doesn't look like it today, but we're there. Everybody's gonna be open. We're all gonna be golfing. It's gonna be great. I hope. My swing's a mess. I wanted to fight the simulator on Saturday. It was bad. Sal Capaccio on the West Her hotline now with me here on WGR. Mike is out today. Zach Jones along as well. Sal, how was the weekend? How was Easter?
Everything was great. I'm glad that you just opened up and talked about that. You were someone I was thinking of this weekend because last year you invited me a few times to come out with you in the morning and you and Owen, Delaware Park, and my schedule, coaching baseball with Max and all that, I just couldn't do it. I'm no longer the head coach. I'm just kind of a dad watching, and I just got fitted for a new driver this weekend. So my first time ever actually getting fitted for a driver.
Awesome. All right, love it.
Yeah.
All right, good deal. Is this your way of saying you're going to be? Because listen, you've met John Gale, but we've not had a chance to play yet. You walking around for 18 holes with John Gale would make his year. So, I hope we can put that together one of these Saturday mornings.
Yeah, I would love to do that. So I guess this is my way of telling you I'm hoping to be a little bit more available.
All right, then I will make sure to keep you at the front of the line when when we need a guy, because we often do. Because you know the way it goes, though. You still got there's still going to be baseball games to go to and all that. But I definitely want you to make sure that you keep me on your list. I guess I will tell you though, I have not hit a ball since last year. I have not gone to the indoor simulators. I haven't gone to the driving range. And when I went to get fitted, the guy who was fitting me, he goes, yeah, that's not a great idea. You should probably have gone to the range a few times. Your swing's going to be different now than it is in a month from now. And I said, I know, but I'm not on the PGA Tour. I just want to see. And I will tell you, you've been fitted, right, for a driver? Yes.
And it really is something to watch how different shafts and obviously loft and all that can matter.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I when I got back into this, I went pretty big into the irons too, new irons after having the same set since 1995 or something. So it was time for an investment, Sal. So what's going on this week? This is just the gym. Are we just lifting weights here? There's no football happening, right?
Ha! Pretty much, yeah. That's exactly what it is. For the Buffalo Bills, they did begin their what is normally a 9-week off-season workout program. I say normally 9 weeks. That's what the NFL allows you. For the first time I can ever remember, Bulldog, the Bills are only using 8 of the 9 weeks, actually. So if you count from today through June 12, when mandatory minicamp ends, it's only 8 weeks. They have one less OTA week than normal. So for whatever reason, that's just what they're doing this year.
Well,
but
clearly they don't want it. They don't want it bad enough.
Yeah, no, right?
Sorry.
We don't want to give any more intel on anything that's going on out there and people having a chance to see what they're doing. But you're right. So they'll be at it for the next 8 weeks consecutively, but each of those is broken into different weeks and different phases. This is phase 1, and as we've talked about many times, you can't really do real football stuff. You can throw. It's called quarterbacks can throw dead ball activities, so they can throw to receivers as long as they're not covered. Kickers, punters, they can work with each other in the holders, but they can't kick it to a kick returner. A returner can catch it from a jugs machine, but not from an actual kicker. And then otherwise, no coaches on the field. It's just strength and conditioning, weight room, and conditioning type stuff.
All right, good deal. So there's no way to take attendance, right? Because I'm sure what Bills fan didn't see video of guys, Josh Allen most prominently, walking in, and I don't know how many Bills fans watched as much of that as you could find. They're like, is James Cook anywhere? Where's James Cook?
I did that.
Yeah, right. We have no way to know for sure, though, right? Whether he's there.
Well, we might or might not. So we actually are scheduled. We will hear from Josh Allen and Brandon Beane tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow is Brandon Beane's pre-draft press conference, and it's in conjunction with these off-season workouts and Josh Allen. We will ask Brandon Beane, I'm sure, is James Cook here? I don't know if he's going to tell us specifically or not if he's there, but look, I mean, every year there's plenty of guys that aren't there. It's voluntary, right? So that's part of it. The other way we could know is, and you won't know necessarily for sure, the Bills will send out video of the workouts. Mainly for TV stations and social media for people like me who aren't in TV to use, right? So we can use that. The Bills will put it out themselves, and they'll have some stuff, but they'll send video out, and that's when people will really search through and see, because we can't go like into the field house and watch the workouts. But the Bills will actually have some video, some B-roll, they call it, obviously, that they'll send out, and then from there, people can take a look. It could be 2-3 minutes long where you take a look at it.
Hey, you have any sense? I asked Eric Wood this question last hour, so it's on my mind. I know we've talked pretty exhaustively, of course, about the James Cook situation. He's the one notable eligible for a contract extension player that did not receive one. And we know how Brandon Beane has sounded about that. And we know Cook I feel like it's been a while since he's made any noise, but most of it's been, just social media, cryptic posts, that kind of thing. Do you have how do you think it most likely goes in 2025 for James Cook? If you had to forecast what's likeliest to happen with James Cook this year, what would that answer be?
I'm still up in the air about it, but I think the most likely outcome for me is that he plays under his current contract.
Same here.
Now, when he comes in and actually starts playing or practicing would be a guess. That's, to me, probably training camp. I don't know. But I think once the regular season starts, I think James Cook plays for the Buffalo Bills under his current contract. I think that's the most likely scenario right now. I do think there's a few different outcomes that wouldn't stun me, I guess. One of them being him getting an extension. Whether, not necessarily what he wants, but or he's been saying he wants, but maybe they figure out a way to find some money, not have to have a huge cap hit this year, do something like that. I think that's one of the outcomes that you could see. I think a very unlikely outcome, but still possible, obviously, would be moving on from him in some capacity, a trade or whatever. I just don't see that happening. This is a player that the Buffalo Bills believe is a very big part of what they're doing. They're still trying to win a Super Bowl. And every time I get people who tell me and tweet at me all these scenarios about the Bills trading James Cook and moving up in the draft, my number one response is, why would the other team do that?
Right.
They're going to have to pay the guy, right? So, you can't just trade him to a team because you want what they have. The other team's got to want the player and want to deal with this situation.
Right, yeah. Oftentimes in situations like this, what you get in compensation from a trade partner is mitigated by the player's desire for a new contract. So, even if you could find someone Right? I mean, hypothetically, the Dallas Cowboys, they could draft Ashton Genty and pay him a rookie contract for 4 years than a fifth-year option. But no, they'd rather take on James Cook and give him $15 million a year for 3 or 4 years because he's a proven commodity and they trust that. What in the world do you think you're getting back? Because they're taking that problem off your hands, if you consider it a problem, right? So the contract they're going to give the player, of course, it has nothing literally to do with you or your team, the Buffalo Bills, but it definitely impacts the return. So any idea that you could use Cook as a piece to move way up in the first round or something, it sounds to me like people who don't really pay attention to what draft value is speculating on that kind of thing, because that's just not realistic to me at all.
It also sounds like, to me, something that I talk about all the time, which is just this tunnel vision of only seeing things through a Bills perspective, right? Like, you have to look at the league and how the league operates and how the league looks and how the league works. It's so funny because I've said this, and this is actually a little bit of a tease I'll give you if you want. We did a podcast today, Matt Bove and I, and one of the things I've been saying on the podcast for the last few weeks is, we went through a few weeks ago, and we ranked Brandon Beane's draft. I don't know if you saw this, but we went, here's round 1, here's round 2, what he's done since 2018. And Matt and I literally ranked each draft pick. So Josh Allen's the best pick in round 1 that he's had, and then so on and so forth. And I put it out there, and a lot of people said, a lot of the reaction was, oh my God, there's so many misses here. And my reaction to that was, well, not really compared to the rest of the league. Like, yes, there are misses, there's no doubt, but every GM has them. And I always say, look at Brett Veach. Brett Veach has just as many, if not more, misses than Brandon Beane. And I use him as an example because that's the Kansas City Chiefs general manager, because A, it's the Chiefs who are always winning, and they're the Bills' kind of conference rival, but B, they literally were hired the same year, and they have the exact same number of drafts under their belt. So anyway, when I say this is from, you have to have more of a perspective around the league. So today what we did on the podcast, I actually did the same thing for Brett Veach's draft. And I looked at it and said, let's compare the two. How many misses? Who has the what misses? Who has what hits? And I still think that's the same. Like, I think that you could look and kind of look at it either way. There's a lot of ways to look at it. And I think this is what happens with something like what we're talking about with James Cook, which is, yes, you have a player here who you really value, but you don't think is worth what the contract he's asking as a fan. So let's see what we can do to maximize and get something else that younger and cheaper and could be just as good as him down the road. Well, guess what? The team that's trading for James Cook is probably going to want to get younger and cheaper and just as good at what you have James Cook down the road. So that's what I mean by all of that.
Yeah, no doubt. Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline with us here on WGR. So you said, I know this has come up already, like defense is what you're thinking with those 3 picks. I spent a little bit of time last hour talking about my dreamboat, which is Nick Emenworry from South Carolina, which is not, I know, right? Maybe I could leave it to you to tell me, but I mean, everyone knows it. It's not the neediest position the Bills have, not really even close. There is a sneaky need down the line, because I think you've mentioned to me there's only Cole Bishop is the only safety that's under contract beyond this season, and he's barely played. So we'll see if I'm sure they want him to be a starter this year, but still, they're not exactly all set beyond this season anyway. Emenworry's been my dream scenario just because I just feel like it just gives you a freak on that side of the ball that could be, in a given week, the best athlete on the field is your safety. And I can use them in all kinds of different places. I don't know that I've ever asked you for an opinion on him as a prospect and him also as an idea for the Bills.
It wouldn't be me who said that about the safeties, because Taylor Rapp is under contract for 2 more years.
Oh, I apologize. I thought that was going out after this year. My bad. Okay.
No, Taylor Rapp is under contract for 2 more years, and he's actually at a very, very good price. He's only at 3.6 this year and $4 million next year on the cap. I think you're in a real good spot with Taylor Rapp. The only question is the injuries that have kind of mounted up a little bit here, right? And I think going forward, being comfortable with that. But other than that, that's right. So to me, Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop are your starting safeties for the next 2 years, and that's why I still get more to. I don't really know if that's something you need to, be pressed into duty, so to speak, to do. That being said, I think the Bills will draft a safety. I just don't think they'll do it that early. I think they'll draft one a little bit later because it's not the kind of position that they're going to put on the field immediately. But a guy that gets drafted before we get to Saturday is, I think, a guy that they're going to count on to be on the field a lot. And as it stands right now, you can give that guy all the runway you want to compete against Cole Bishop. He's still coming in behind Cole Bishop, right? So I think, to me, that's not an area where they're going to say, let's do that, because you just spent a second-round asset last year on Cole Bishop. It just doesn't make sense to me to do that. And then let's go back to what Sean McDermott said at the owners' meetings about Taylor Rapp. A fan out there could say, well, they could get better than Taylor Rapp, and that's fine. You could have that opinion. Listen, Sean McDermott, what he said about Taylor Rapp, he said he's the Terrell Bernard of the secondary. He sets things for them. Like, he's super important for what they do. So to me, he's not going anywhere, and he's going to be on the field as your number one safety. So I agree with you that this guy, Emanwari, is this freak, and he's got all these traits. I just don't think that that's something the Bills are interested in doing within the first couple of rounds. I think they do draft a safety, though. They've done work on safeties. I know that, but I think that's just because of the natural progression of how you do things at this time of year, and I do think they will want to add one.
Yeah, it just doesn't line up. I'm trying to just stay. It's your first love, Sal. You got to stay true. Right? I
get it.
I mean, last year my first draft crush was Keon Coleman. I moved off of that because it sounded like a worse and worse idea all the time, and then the Bills ended up drafting him.
Mm-hmm.
I should have just stayed in love with Keon Coleman. I could have at least been right. That, if nothing else, I
will say this, though, Bulldog. I will say this, unless every read that I get and what I think you probably get about how they feel about Cole Bishop is wrong, right? That could happen.
Yep.
There's no doubt. Like, if they don't believe, after what they've seen, that Cole Bishop is truly going to be like a full-time starter, and that's why they went out and got Derek Forrest to say, okay, let's see what this kid has, and they feel like they have to really have some more security there and have a guy they really love, and Emanwari or somebody else is somebody that's 20th on their board and they're sitting at 30. Sure, things like that are always possible. And look, I mean, McDermott did not commit to Cole Bishop being a starter next year. What he said was he's done some nice things, but he's got to come in and earn it. Like, he's got to earn the spot. So that's always possible. I just still don't think that it's more likely.
Right. Well, so I guess if you're right, your read is pretty close to my read, by the way. I that's how I feel. I mean, I'm even using words like forcing it in. I guess that's the scenario I got to root for, is that this guy somehow makes it to 30 and they have to at least make a decision, like, because it might not be needy, but man, I just feel like the prospect is so super intriguing. I don't know. Maybe I'm just guilty of getting seduced by the Kyle Hamilton impact with Baltimore, but I just feel like that's a chess piece, man. Would be a really cool thing to see Sean McDermott have a guy like that to be able to move around his defense. Because I just don't think that there's, like, who's the highest end talent on that defense? I think they got a bunch of guys that are good, that are maybe even, outplaying their draft status by a lot, which is, credit to them. I'm not saying they don't have good players. I just don't know that they have anybody that's really great over there.
Agreed. And listen, first of all, I would say I wonder if they feel Cole Bishop is a chess piece. Now, I don't think he doesn't necessarily have the traits of Emanwari, but I do think, look what he did last year. He's a guy that played a lot in the box. He came down against the run a lot. He was used as that third safety sometimes, right? I do think that they feel that way about him, and he's a good enough athlete for sure to be able to play on the back end. So I wonder if they feel he's a guy like that. They signed Michael Hoyt. Now he's going to miss 6 games, but that's exactly what his profile is. In the front 7, though, not in the back area, which is move him around. Use him as a chess piece if you want to use that. Like, that's the kind of guy they have. But 100% agree with you. It's something I said really since the offseason started, which is the area. And this is actually going back to the whole Brandon Beane, Brett Veach thing and what Matt and I both settled on. And this is true. And you'll see this. I'm going to put this out. I'm going to put the graph out so you can all see it. I think one thing that you really take away is the Bills have had some really good value draft picks. Their floor is high. I think Brandon Beane's done a good job of the floor of the draft. He's had some misses. It's the ceiling that's other than Josh Allen.
Right.
Now, that's what it is. Because you look at what Brett Veach, for example, has done in Kansas City, I think his hits have been higher and better. They've been more off the chart hits, right? Like a Trent McDuffie, right there, right? Someone like that. But I think that the misses for him have been also more wider than they have been for Brandon Beane. So higher floor for Brandon Beane, but lower ceiling, which goes back to what you say. And you go to the defensive side, you really don't have those. I mean, Bulldog, do they have it on offense? I guess James Cook has been that in a way.
Right.
I mean, but other than Josh Allen, I don't think they have that on the team, really.
Right. Yeah, that lands uncomfortably, I must say. Thinking about it, right? Because how many great players do they have, right? The tackles are good, the running back's good, but yeah, like somebody to really be, a scary proposition. Yeah, it's in short supply, I guess, on both sides of the ball outside of thank God for Josh Allen, I guess is one way you could look at it.
That's right, but I think you could look at it two different ways because that is true. But Bulldog, they have a good roster on the back end. And they have, this is what they, it's almost like, you know what Matt said on the podcast today? He said Brett Veach, for example, has hit more home runs, but Brandon Beane and struck out more.
His
but
batting average is higher.
Doubles.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and I don't know. I don't know if there's one right way to do it. I think that on a consistent basis, year to year, the Bills are going to be there, yes, because of Josh Allen. But you know what? When guys go down, look at these guys stepping in. Look at Jamarcus Ingram and Cam Lewis. They just know Dorian Williams can come in and lead the team in tackles. That's happened. Look what's happened on the offensive line, with guys with Alec Anderson being able to do what he does. But when these critical games have happened, you need these critical plays. Where is that elite talent that stepped up and made that critical play? And that's where I think it's fallen short. And this is why it's a good debate, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So the team announced Tre'Davious White officially. Have we gotten anywhere over the weekend on exactly how that contract is breaking down, or are we still waiting on that?
No, now that it's announced, that means he's signed it. So that means that somehow, some way, those details get released.
It'll get in the system, right?
Yeah, it'll be in an NFLPA system, and someone will get it, and they'll get the exact details, and it'll be out there, and we'll see exactly where that is. The issue, I think, that people have to still remember is no matter what his cap hit this year is, the Bills are still counting $4.1 million on the original dead cap hit for cutting him. That is not going away. It doesn't matter. So if his cap hit this year is $2 million, it's going to be over $6 million. If his cap hit this year is $3 million, it's going to be over $7 million because you have to add the 4.1 on top of it. We don't know those details yet.
Maybe this is not that interesting to the general audience here, but I'm just curious from a bookkeeping standpoint. Does that dead money just get lumped in with his current cap hit, or is it designated differently as dead money in a different spot on the ledger, if you know what I mean?
So I think technically it's a different spot. And I think that if you go to either Spot Track or Over the Cap, they could obviously do it however they want on their own website. But to me, I think what happens is officially it is a separate contract. It's a player because he was on your team. Now he's not. It's not the same player. This is literally you might as well call him Tre'Davious Smith instead of a Tre'Davious White. You know what I mean? And put him over here because he is listed as a dead cap hit on the dead cap ledger, and then he's also going to have a current cap hit on a different ledger on a different side.
All right. Yep. I'm looking at Spot Track. I don't see a new posting for Tre'Davious White, but the 4.1 is down there with other players who are not here anymore. Von Miller, Kyrie Elam, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see how that. Oh, yeah. He's got a space waiting for Tre'Davious White when he gets the details.
A separate
but he
space, right?
Yeah, right. A separate space on the active roster. So maybe that answers that question. Anyway. All right, Sal. Thank you very much for this. As always, tomorrow sounds like it'll be a busy day. Do we know timing on any of this stuff with Bean and or Allen?
Yeah, 12:30 is when we're scheduled to get rolling. I believe with Josh first. I'll have to check on that to make sure, but I believe Josh at 12:30, then Brandon Bean. Could be flip-flop, but we should have everything pretty much wrapped up by the time you and I can get together and talk a little bit.
All right, good deal, Sal. Appreciate it very much. As always, have a good night, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
You got it, buddy.
That is our Sal Capaccio on the West Her Hotline. His appearances are always brought to you by New York's only outlet liquor. When you need to stock up, it's the place to buy a case. What's your outlet? Most likely outcome for James Cook. I've asked Eric Wood. I've asked Sal Capaccio. How about all you? You got the gut feeling about how this thing will end up playing out with James Cook. We can maybe tackle that a little bit more here and get some phone calls going on it at 803-0550. Paul Hamilton is coming up at the top of the hour, so we got about 40 minutes or so. Just kick some things around with us if you are so inclined. Mike is out today along with Zach Jones. I'm the Bulldog, and you're listening to WGR.
Phase number 1 for the Bills' offseason program is underway as a number of players came back to town today, and that does now include cornerback Trey White, who officially signed his one-year deal with the team earlier this afternoon. The Eagles also signed some players. Center Cam Jurgens, 4-year, $68 million extension. $39.4 million of that is guaranteed. And now at $17 million a year, that does make Jurgens the second highest paid center, only behind Creed Humphrey of the Chiefs at $18 million. The Sabres did put a bow on their season. Exit press conferences from over the weekend from Lindy Ruff and Kevin Adams put the final touches on that. Paul Hamilton has more on what they had to say up at our website, WGR550.com. And we'll also hear what Paul has to say coming up in just about a half hour when he joins the show at 6 o'clock. We also have a ton of playoff action tonight. 4 games in the NHL, 2 game ones. At 7, Washington hosts Montreal. Then at 10, the Oilers are in LA versus the Kings. And 2 game twos. 7:30, Winnipeg looks to take a 2-0 series lead over the Blues. And then at 9:30, the Colorado Avalanche look to do the same against the Stars. Good news, though, for Colorado going into tonight. Gabriel Landeskog activated from IR and is eligible to play. And then in the NBA, just 2 games tonight. 7:30 sees the Knicks hosting Detroit. New York did take game 1. Then at 10, the Clippers look to even up the series as they take on the Nuggets in Denver. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Offers, but I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is a running back who's in a contract here, wants a lot of money. It's a draft with a bunch of great running back prospects. You know, there's no question that you're not going to maximize your return on James Cook. I think a third-round pick at best is what you would get.
That is Evan Silva from a recent appearance on this radio program. Thank you for joining us, talking about the James Cook situation there, by the way. 803-0550 is the number. You got an idea on how, like, what really, the way I phrased it to both Eric and Sal earlier this afternoon, what's the most likely outcome in 2025 for James Cook and the Bills? I'm with both guys. I think he'll end up, I've thought this all along. It's not to say I don't, that I mind investing in conversation about other ideas. I just think the most likely outcome is that he comes in and plays this year on his existing contract. I don't think with that the Bills would feel the need to franchise him. I suppose there's a scenario where he has another year like last year, or I don't know, even better. It's hard for me to imagine him scoring more touchdowns, but maybe more yards, more catches, I don't know, more something that could be considered an improvement on last season, and they would want to franchise him, but I kind of doubt it. But the point is, they've got all the leverage, and Cook really does not have, he's got his services, but the player is going to be compelled to come in at his age, this point in his career, going into year 4 of his career, in order to get credit for the year, the contract told off of his rookie contract, he's got to play. So I don't see any other way around it. To me, the question becomes then what, level of disgruntled is he? Assuming some level of disgruntled. And what does that mean? Like, is it something that causes a problem, or is it just sorry, our job, your job are not entirely the same all the time, i.e. the Bills' business and James Cook handling his business. They're not necessarily going to meet in the middle. They I think would be right to want to get this year out of him, and if he is going to cash that kind of a contract at some point, I'll gladly let someone else pay it. And that is said, recognizing his value to this team right now. I just don't think it's not as much what I don't think. What I think is you will regret that contract eventually. If you give him, I don't want to say any running back because there would have to be exceptions, but I don't believe James Cook is one of them. And maybe in this situation, he should be, considering how important he is in the conversation we were just having last segment about how many good to great players does this team have. Cook is in that conversation, and it's not a real long list. Maybe you should find your way to it. I don't know. I just would never want to do it. I think that ends up being something you end up regretting. 803-0550 is the number you want to get involved in the conversation. Would love to have you. Let's check out what Kevin's got on his mind. Kevin, you're on WGR. Thanks for calling.
Hey, guys. Love the show. Draft is like a annual tradition for me. Quick question or comment that I'd love to hear from you guys. I saw recently that Albert Breer dropped some news that Jamison Williams, receiver from the Lions, might be available for a trade on draft night. Kind of seems to fit the bill perfectly for what we're kind of looking for that kind of tier of receiver. Just want to get your thoughts and maybe what you might be willing to trade to get him. Thanks, guys. Go Bills.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. He's an intriguing player to me for sure. His skill set, absolutely. Well, yeah, I think it matches what I'm looking. I mean, it's speed and lightning, and there's some run after catch there, but there's certainly get down the field there. Yeah, I love this player. Loved him coming out of college. I didn't even think it was ridiculous that they drafted him as highly as they did coming off an ACL. That's how good that's how good he was thought to be, and I think it is. But what is he not? He's not a number one. And why would the Lions be considering moving off of him? Well, it's contract time, right? I mean, that is always the fulcrum of any one of these situations. I shouldn't say anyone. Almost always, it's the flashpoint. So, Amon-Ra St. Brown's their number one receiver, and it's time to pay up. And, can we keep everything? We got, Jahmyr Gibbs to pay. Speaking of second running back contracts, maybe he's an exception-worthy candidate. I don't know. But they don't want it. They're balking at paying that second contract. Spotrac has his second contract, his market value around $20 million a year. So you're not at the top of the market. I mean, that is not number one money at all anymore in the league. Number one money is 30 and beyond at this point. So, can you live with paying that receiver that money? I could. Could you find your way to structuring the deal in such a way that you can make it work short term? Sure. What am I willing to give up? Well, I want to say a third would be the perfect sweet spot here. Sort of how Evan Silva was talking as we came into the segment. He was talking about James Cook, but the point is the same. You've heard it made already numerous times by me just today and over the years. You're trading for a player looking for a new contract. That lessens how much you have to pay in assets. So I want to say a third. The Bills don't have a third. So I'm not sure where to go from there. I think I'd be reluctant to give up one of my seconds for him and then pay him. So I just don't think I should have to do that to get the player. I mean, I have the pick, and you could argue that's a good use of a second. He's only 24 years old. It's a very good use of a pick. What are some potential problems? This is a guy who is yet to play an entire season in the league, and that's not all the injury. I mean, he was drafted with the injury and didn't play until the very end of the 22 season, his draft year. So that was the ACL. In 23, he was suspended for gambling, missed 4 games. That happened in April, so he missed the first 4 games, and actually it was supposed to be longer than that. It was 6 games, but it got lifted and reduced. It was only 4 games, 2 weeks shorter than originally thought to be. So there's your miss there. Last year, it was PEDs that cost him 2 games. So he's been healthy. What he hasn't been is always available, and it's been through his own lack of maturity. However you want to look at that. I mean, the gambling thing just always blows my mind. That guys could get wrapped up. I mean, I believe me, I recognize the allure of gambling, but when you're an NFL player or a pro athlete of any kind, know what you can and can't do. And the same goes for the PED thing too. It's another guy. I mean, he's clean now. I mean, I don't have to worry about it, but the Bills just signed 2 guys, one of whom they knew had a looming 6-game PED suspension. The other they didn't know, but still followed through with the signing. I'm talking about Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi, of course, from free agency. That's not a reason why you wouldn't sign Williams, but it's notable that he's not played the entire season the last 2 years, and it's through like off the field transgressions, all right? Gambling and PEDs. That's not great. All that said, I mean, this is a player, 1,000 yards last year on 58 catches. This is a guy that gets down the field. 7 touchdowns in 15 games for Detroit last year. So, what's the price? I don't think, to me, this is a player I want to trade one of those first 3 picks for. Certainly not the first round pick, and I'm reluctant to part with either of the seconds. Beyond that, if there's something you could put together, like I'm listening. He is kind of really exactly what I think the Bills offense needs is that player. The question is, you take a shot on a rookie with a rookie contract, use that second round pick I don't want to spend on this trade and draft a player that can give you maybe some of the same attributes. I probably end up, push comes to shove, doing that. Now, I don't know that the Bills will draft a receiver with one of those picks, but it's what I think I would rather do that than make this trade if the player ends up even moving. But, it seems likely. We've seen big-time receivers, way bigger names than Jameson Williams, get moved at the draft, so maybe it's something that could happen. John is next up here on WGR. Hi, John. Thanks for calling. You're on the air.
How you doing? I got a question for you about the receiver. You got an MVP quarterback, and we still don't have that breaking receiver to go the next step. Now, Brandon Beane screwed up last year by trading his picks, and he lost Ladd McConkey and he lost Worthy to get a guy Coleman who can't go through the separation. What are your thoughts on that? And I just heard the last question.
Okay, John, thanks for the call. They didn't miss out on it. They didn't draft McConkey. McConkey went after Coleman, right? He's like pick 34, maybe even. So they didn't lose out. They made a choice there. There are other guys that, they bailed out of draft spots, but Xavier Worthy, the most notable of them. Look, you could. Either one of the Iowa State guys might be interesting in that part of the draft. The guy from Utah State, Jalen Royals. Higgins, by the way, is the bigger of the 2 Iowa State guys. The other guy I'm thinking of, sorry, I got the wrong cursor out here, is Jalen Noel. I think they could answer what it is they're looking for. The question is, are we looking for the same things? It has been 5 years. They talk about wanting this speed element, but Beane is always right there with, track guy or whatever. Like, it's sort of, sounding as though, they're skeptical about the fast guys or something. Or certainly I understand why you'd be skeptical of someone who's a track guy and not a football player. But I worry that it's something that Beane sort of agrees with just because it's the path of lesser resistance. That they have had drafts every year since 2018 that Beane has been here, and they have yet to answer this speed element. They have yet to acquire it. And so that's a lot of picks and a lot of years. And I know every year's different, and the board and different grades, and, maybe they've got valid reasons. We'll see. Xavier Worthy had a nice year and very nice playoffs, and looks to be a piece that is going to be a problem moving forward. And the Bills passed. I don't know if the same track guy criticism would have been a reason why they passed, because Worthy thought the Bills liked him. That's come out through Tyler Dunn, I think, over the last few months here, that he thought the Bills were going to pick him, and then they traded the pick and let Kansas City get him. And so I don't know what kind of messages he was getting from certain elements of the Bills front office, but according to him, the player, he thought there was something brewing here with Buffalo, but they passed. So I don't know. I wonder if needing speed, stretching the defense vertically as well as horizontally is just something to say to get through the news conferences. Because They've drafted and acquired a lot of football players, and really very few of them, even in theory, were going to be an answer to this. I mean, I'm not saying they haven't had fast guys that were long shots to make the roster, right? And look, Deontay Hardy was this. They signed him, never really used him. And I don't know, he didn't warrant being used. Whatever happened, it didn't work. So I guess I want to give them that. They did try that. That was a speed element. But, he was also the return guy, and there was... I guess the first time that I see Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott acquire a receiver with a a premium type asset, either in free agency money-wise or in the draft with the level of pick it is, will be the first... You'll have shown me. I think I'm at show me. Show me you want speed, because their actions do not at all lead you to that conclusion. It is raining like it's angry out. Like it's angry raining.
It's violent.
Like it looks like it would hurt if you were outside in it.
Yes.
It's spring. That happens.
It's spring, but this is really dampening my mood. I look outside and I'm like, what's that noise? Oh, it's,
it's the rain hitting the building. Yeah. We're in for a good week, though. We got that going for us.
Oh, yeah.
All right. 803-0550. If you're out at Dingus Day, man, I hope you brought a poncho and maybe a backup. Backup poncho? I mean, I don't know, man. It's a tough one out there. 803-0550 is the number. If you want to talk about the Bills and the draft, we'll segue back into hockey, which is where we started today's show, when Paul Hamilton joins me at the top of the hour. So about 15 minutes away from that. So you got a thought on the Bills, feel free to get it in now. Again, 803-0550. Mike is out today along with Zach Jones. I'm the Bulldog, and you're listening to WGR.
More of Schopp in the
here on a Monday afternoon. Mike is out today. I'm the Bulldog. Thanks for hanging. I don't know if you've heard the news and the update. I hope you're paying attention to the update. Zach, he pours his heart and soul into every one of those updates. Show them some respect. The Seattle Kraken have made some changes. Dan Bilesman, remember him? He was their head coach this year. You don't remember. He's been fired after only 1 year. And our old buddy Jason Botterill, who has been there as an assistant GM, I think since they entered the league. I'm pretty sure he got hired with Ron Francis, or was one of Ron Francis's first hires to fill out the front office there, Francis being the GM at the time, and Botterill had been installed as an assistant GM. He is ascending. Everyone's bumping up the ladder here. Francis is going upstairs to some sort of a executive role, and Jason Botterill is the new GM of the Seattle Kraken. So good luck to him. I know it didn't end well here, and the team was, a failure under his watch, of course. But I've always sort of I've reserved a place where I'm not as hard on Botterill simply because the circumstances of his dismissal were just they were kind of odd. The Sabres, when the season ended, talked about why they were retaining him, and there was a famous quote from ownership about how we know things that you don't know. And look, that can make you want to make fun of Botterill if you want, but they were deciding to keep Botterill on, to keep going. And then we got through, into the summer. It was a couple of months after the season had ended, and we got into the summer, and it was, COVID, lockdowns, return to play in hockey and the extended playoffs and all the stuff they did. But Botterill was fired then. And I've always suspected, I've never had it 100%. Otherwise, I think I would even go harder on this. But it felt very much to me like Botterill was sort of throwing his body in front of the moving train about firing lots of people during COVID. And that when ownership said they felt like they weren't being heard, that was what they were referring to. And so if that's right, and again, I'm not positive, but I feel like that was a part of it, if not the main part of it, that has always made me I have some sympathy for Jason Botterill. I think he tried to do the right thing by people who were working with him and under him in the organization, and he got fired for it. So, it doesn't look good on his resume that he got fired, and people in Seattle that are paying attention to the hockey are like, oh, great, another recycled GM. This guy couldn't do it in Buffalo. And look, I don't know that the drought would have ended if you got another year out of Botterill and he wasn't dismissed the way he was, but the circumstances of his firing here have never really sat well with me because of what I've just said. And so, again, if that's right, go get him. I hope he finds some success out there in Seattle with the Kraken. We'll take a time out here. Paul Hamilton is headed your way. After this, we'll dissect some of what Kevin Adams and Lindy Ruff had to say to the media on Saturday as they concluded locker cleanout, and talk some about the NHL playoffs with Paul as well when we continue. Mike is out today, along with Zach Jones. I am the Bulldog, and you're listening to WGR.
Landeskog has been activated from IR and is eligible to play. And then some coaching news as well in hockey. As former Sabres head coach Dan Bylsma has been fired from Seattle as their head coach after just one season at the helm. Then in the NBA, we have 2 playoff games. Phase 1 of the Bills' offseason program got underway today as a number of Bills came back into town, including cornerback Tre'Davious White, who officially signed his one-year deal today. For more on the Bills' offseason plan, Sal Capaccio has a piece up at our website, WGR550.com. The Eagles have signed center Cam Jurgens to a 4-year, $68 million extension. $39.4 million of that is guaranteed, and at $17 million a year, that makes Jurgens the second highest paid center, only behind Creed Humphrey of the Chiefs at $18 million. The Sabres did put a bow on their season with exit press conferences from head coach Lindy Ruff and general manager Kevin Adams over the weekend. Paul Hamilton joins the show next to give us the latest on that, and playoff action continues tonight. We'll start in the NHL, where there are 4 games this evening. 2 game number 1s at 7. Washington hosts Montreal. Then at 10, the Oilers are in LA versus the Kings. And then 2 game number 2, 7:30, Winnipeg looks to take a 2-0 series lead over the Blues. Then at 9:30, Colorado looks to do the same against the Stars. Colorado, though, potentially getting some help. Gabriel Landeskog has been activated from IR. He is eligible to play. We also had some coaching news today. The Kraken making a number of changes. Familiar faces are involved. Head coach Dan Bylsma out after 1 year, and as Ron Francis appears to be moving to upper management, the organization is elevating former Sabres GM Jason Botterill to the same role. He's been serving as the assistant GM for a number of seasons. And then in the NBA, just 2 games. 7:30 sees the Knicks hosting Detroit. New York did take game 1. Then at 10, the Clippers will look to even up their series with the Nuggets as they take them on in Denver. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
He has the facts to back up his opinions.
People ask me, well, how are the Sabres going to, are they going to win tonight? I don't have a clue.
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
Thanks for hanging with me here on this Monday. Mike has been off today. Hopefully he's feeling better and well enough to rejoin the program tomorrow. Excited to welcome Bills corner Christian Benford to the show at 4:30. Ross Tucker will also be on with us at 5. We'll probably squeeze Sal in somewhere there because it's going to be a busy day out at the stadium. Sal mentioned earlier they're expecting to do some media out there tomorrow, including Josh Allen and Brandon Beane. Beane, the focus would be, of course, the upcoming draft on Thursday. So anyway, probably squeeze Sal in there somewhere too, along with Benford and Ross Tucker. Joining us now on the West Her Hotline is our man Paul Hamilton. We are a couple of games, well, in some cases, a couple of games into the Stanley Cup playoffs, still waiting on a few series to get going tonight, and then even tomorrow with Tampa and Florida waiting until Tuesday to have their game 1. And of course, the Sabres put the formal lid on their season over the weekend when Lindy Ruff and Kevin Adams addressed the media, and Paul's here to pour over some of that with me. Hi, Paul. How was the holiday? Did everything treat you well?
Yeah, I get to start my Bills coverage tomorrow since Sal will be hanging out with Brandon Beane. I'm going to hang out with Josh Allen. So
okay,
that'll be my assignment. And as you know, when hockey ends, I hang out with the Bills until hockey starts again, which is usually week 2 of the season. So I just go out and help Sal out. And tomorrow, as I said, he'll be with Brandon Beane and I'll be with Josh Allen. So
good deal. And eventually
it's time to start that.
But you'll also squeeze in Rochester Americans playoff games. When does that get rolling?
That gets going Friday. Game 1, I will be here doing a Bison's game with Pat Malacaro. But Game 2, I will be in Rochester. It's an afternoon game, 3 o'clock game. Game 2, it's the best of 5. If there is a Game 5, it's in Rochester on May 9th. And if folks are saying, why is it taking so long for a 5-game series? It really does make sense. They want people in the building. So they try to get as many games as they can on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that, they don't want a Game 5 on Tuesday, or any game on Tuesday or anything like that. So that's why these series get stretched out because they, Rochester they're going to get their home games on, Friday and Sunday. And then Syracuse, I think it's Thursday. And I don't know. Syracuse, they do get a weekend game out of it too, and then Game 5 would be on Friday the 9th. Then that would be in Rochester if there's a Game 5.
So what if anything? I know both guys talked for quite a while on Saturday, and if there were any other interesting player comments that you and I haven't had a chance to talk about because we last talked on Friday here about day 1 of the locker cleanout stuff. What are your takeaways here? Because I hear Adams talking and Paul, him leading off with, I believe we should have been in the playoffs was very tough for me to hear because I just, I know I understand theoretically what he's saying, but there's a little bit too much of, I put a good team together. We just didn't execute or something. And I just don't like how that sounded.
That's exactly what he thinks. But you know what? Through the whole thing, he didn't blame anybody but himself for the whole thing. He says, it's on me. I'm the general manager, and I got to fix it. And it's not. He goes, it was not good enough. Obviously, it wasn't. And so, he put it all on himself, but there were high expectations. I think he and Lindy Ruff both thought they had a playoff team when the season started, and I think that was the expectation they had, and that expectation wasn't met, and since it wasn't met, the season's a failure. It's as simple as that. Just because Yuri Kulik got better, no, that doesn't make the season a good season. Just because the last 6 weeks you played pretty good hockey, that doesn't make the season better. The season is a complete failure. You have regressed in each of the last 3 seasons. You have gotten worse. Your record has been worse, and that's unacceptable. And, when he was asked 2 different ways, one question was, what assurances do you have that you're still going to be the general manager? And he said, I haven't met with Terry Pegula yet. And when he was brought, the thing that, they're going to be, maybe the chairs will be shuffled and he might get moved to another job, he didn't say yes or no. He said again, I have not talked to Terry Pegula yet. That's coming. Could have happened today for all we know. But usually he goes down to South Florida for that to happen, and it usually happens pretty quickly. So, he didn't say, no, I'm going to be the GM or anything like that. It's basically things are going to be discussed. My first question was, are there going to be changes in the coaching staff or the hockey department? And he said the same thing. He goes, I haven't sat down with Lindy yet to discuss that. He goes, it's a possibility. But, let's all be honest here. You can't roll back the whole thing. You just can't. You can't just say all the coaches are coming back and everybody in the hockey department's coming back and everything's great. We're just going to try it again. I don't think that rolls with your dwindling fan base. Fewer and fewer people are in that building, and you're the idea that you're going to make the playoffs. I think you have to make some changes somewhere, and that's what those meetings have to be about. It's like, well, maybe you're not going to change Adams. But there are other people you can be changing. There are other people who are in over their heads. There are other inexperienced people, including Adams in that hockey department, who are doing jobs that they should not be doing. And, something has to change.
How likely do you think that is, Paul? like that Adams, for example, let's just start there, because like other changes, coaching staff, I can understand that they'll be reluctant to run the whole thing back, but the idea of Adams, like, I don't know. What's your best guess about the likelihood of that happening? That Terry Pegula has seen enough here, because I mean we're operating. Dan Bileswell missed the playoffs in his only year, returned to the bench with Seattle, gone. Peter Laviolette won the President's Trophy with the Rangers last year. They missed this year, gone. The Bruins are standing pat in the front office, but they had a coach leave already in the season, a coaching change already. And I think the guy that was there was only interim, so they got a coach to hire. So the changes are happening around them. How likely do you think it is? Well, you probably hate this question, don't you? It's so hard to forecast. Like it seems
because of this owner.
Yeah, it seems incredible that Kevin Adams is 5 years and nothing. You know what? Let me come at it this way with you, because it dawned on me today hearing a clip of them and really Adams talking about accountability. How does a player feel getting lectured? Might seem too stern, but like having a conversation with Kevin Adams about accountability, personal accountability, when the player is sitting across from a guy who's been flailing around trying to do this job and has failed 5 times out of 5. Like, where's the accountability for Kevin Adams?
Well, to me, it's where's the accountability for the owner.
That's what I mean. Yeah,
Kevin
right.
Adams is taking accountability for his actions.
Yes.
But the owner doesn't seem to think he needs to hold himself accountable. He doesn't think he needs to put himself in front of the media, and which is really the extension of the fans, and hold himself accountable. He thinks maybe he can write a letter, and that's good enough. He's done that before, and that's how he holds himself accountable. But to actually sit down and be held accountable, no, he won't. He doesn't do that. He throws other people under the bus to go do that. The GM's got to go stand in front of the media. The players have to go stand behind the media. Lindy Ruff has to go stand in front of the media. Him, nah, not his job. You know, where he should be the first one to be standing there being held accountable for what's going on with his organization, and he doesn't do it. So, to me, there is no accountability there. And if to me, he does not put winning first. He puts, I want to be heard first. And hopefully, if I'm heard, we'll win. He doesn't want a general manager who's going to sit there and tell him what he's thinking is wrong. And that's what a good general manager will do. That's what a guy who has experience will do. And just to tell him, that's not going to work. This is wrong. What you've been doing is wrong. That's not what he wants to hear. So to me, he doesn't want to win bad enough. Sure, he wants to win. There's no question he wants to win. But he doesn't want to win bad enough that he wants to put a guy in there who actually knows what he's doing. And he doesn't hold himself accountable. So to me, that's where the accountability isn't being held up.
Right. So that still, however you want to structure that, and look, guy to guy reactions to that would be different. I'm sure there are guys there that swear by Kevin Adams, and I'll bet there's guys that don't think he has a clue what he's doing. But accountability is a very hard word to throw around liberally about this organization when at the very top it's lacking, and it's so evident to people observing it around the league. So just really, really, really tough. Coaching staff-wise, Paul, like Seth Appert was elevated. It seemed to a lot of us, I don't know if this was correct or not, maybe an assumption that was wrong on my part and a lot of people's part, that he was sort of in waiting with Lindy coming in. And I don't know, his fingerprints were all over the power play, were they not? And the power play killed him again this year. Like, what do you want to do?
Head coach's power play that he's coaching, though.
Okay, what do you want to do with the coaching staff?
Yeah, I mean, it's not. That's the misconception I keep trying to tell fans. It's not like football. It's not a power play coordinator. The head coach sits down with his coaching staff and discusses what he wants on a power play and what he wants on a penalty kill. Now, he might listen to suggestions, but at the end of the day, Seth Appert is coaching Lindy Ruff's power play. They are coaching Lindy Ruff's penalty kill. They were coaching Don Granado's power play. That's what that is. It's not Seth Appert's power play. Now, maybe he could coach Lindy Ruff's power play better. Lindy Ruff's power plays, though, if you look, have never been all that good since he's left. Look at his power plays in Dallas. for 4 years, and look at them in New Jersey for 4 years. They were not good. They were about where they were in Buffalo. So, there are a lot of things that Lindy Ruff does well. Devising a power play is not one of them. So you look at that. I didn't have much hope for the power play improving before Lindy Ruff even stepped on the ice, and I don't have much hope for it improving next year. I mean, I just don't think he's a power play coach.
Well, they should do something about that then, right? I mean, I know they're not going to topple Lindy over that, I suppose. That would have happened by now, but maybe, I don't know, bring some people in that can bring their own ideas and augment what they're doing, because clearly, I mean, it's not working. I mean, they got outscored, in special teams badly, even with the shorthanded goals added in. They just had a terrible year. You could argue it's like that or goaltending. If one or the other had been like even middle, then they probably are in. But they obviously weren't, and so, here we sit.
How many games, that got away from them, like Colorado or Detroit, or we can name probably 10 of them, where they were ahead and blew a 2 or 3 goal lead and lost the game. How many of those games turn around if all of a sudden you popped a power play goal in the middle of all that?
Right.
Now all of a sudden, instead of giving them momentum because your power play is horrendous and you can't even get in the zone, and they already have momentum because they already scored a goal or two to cut the lead, and now your power play was horrendous. So now they're like, all right, great kill, guys, great kill, and all that. I mean, just, how many games could they have turned around, close games, if their power play was 11th in the league,
right.
12th, somewhere in there, instead of being at the bottom of the league where it was. And, it is a big thing that can change hockey games.
All right, Paul, thank you for this. We'll see as conditions warrant what the rest of the week will look like here. Noticing, that, of course, respecting that you're on this Bills jag as well, so we'll see how everything goes.
I'm still paying attention to the Sabres, don't worry.
And certainly we'll want to touch base about the playoffs at some point, too. We didn't have any time here, Bruce. We got to go. But I hate this rollout with game. And Tampa, Florida, they're waiting until 8:30 tomorrow night to make it even worse. I mean, I know. Come on, NHL. All right, thanks, Paul. Paul Hamilton on the West Here Hotline. His appearances here on WGR, brought to you by Equitable Advisors. Planning for your future is about more than just money. Let Equitable be your guide. And by Relax Honda. Relax. We got this. We'll hit up a timeout here and get you a conversation with our dude Eric Wood, Bills radio color analyst. Joined me earlier. We'll bring that back for you right after this on WGR.
Never miss a